The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the expressed written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Tuesday, September 11th, Wednesday, September 12th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, broadcasting to you live from the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong on the SOR radio network and Deep Talk Radio, and we welcome each and every one of you to tonight's show. If you want to listen to our archives, they are free on our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, shopping at our store, reading up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, tickets are on sale right now for the first annual Caribou Paracon, brought to you by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th. We're just a couple of weeks away. Go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now. Tonight's show is brought to you by the YouTube channel Ensuho. Sebastian Martin brings high-quality messages to the masses. Go to spacedoutradio.com, click on the Ensuho banner, and subscribe to the channel today. First off, we want to kick off this show, take the opportunity to say that we will never forget what happened 17 years ago today in New York City. Over 2,900 people, first responders, 343 firefighters. May we never forget our history and how we got to where we are today. God bless everybody in New York and everybody affected from 17 years ago. Now, for tonight, One of the top researchers in the field of ufology the last year or so has been Canadian author Grant Cameron of presidentialufo.com. Since the To the Stars Academy became public almost a year ago, then the New York Times article in December of last year, Grant's phone has literally been ringing off the hook from people wanting to know the inside scoop of what is truly happening with the disclosure movement. So here's where it gets a little bit interesting. This is what's happening. Grant is someone who, for some reason, everybody is clamoring to. He doesn't even know why, but he's been able to get the information. Many people state that the recent actions of Tom DeLonge's group have made massive strides towards unlocking the UFO mystery. Others proclaim the publicity disclosure has been given has done more harm than good for the field of ufology, especially from experiencers. Then, at the bottom of hour number 3, we're going to get to the news. Everett Themer will be back with the latest edition of The Encounter. We are just having a quick Skype issue with Mr. Grant Cameron right now. I'm trying to get a hold of him. I think he may be rebooting his computer. I'm not too sure. Now, I know it's not going to be a situation like we had with Ian Holt a couple of weeks ago, but I can tell you this. Grant and I were just on the line, and all of a sudden his audio just became really, really staticky on his end. And he's like, dude, you got to call me back. I'm like, okay, we're doing that. We're definitely doing that. So what is your opinion of the disclosure movement? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. What is your opinion of the disclosure movement? We're going to find out from Grant here, because for a lot of people out there, there is a big, big theory out there that they're getting ripped off. There's a ton of people out there who are like, yeah, we're going to do this, man. We're going to do this. This is it. This is the start of it. This is where we're going. UFOs and aliens are going to be that topic of the future of mankind. Yet there are those who are out there saying, gee whiz, are we sure we want to go down this road? Are we sure we want to head down this way? Mr. Grant Cameron, I got you on your cell phone. How you doing?
Yeah, I just rebooted here, so maybe first break we'll see if I can go back up here.
Absolutely.
Audio goes every once in a while. Yep, go ahead.
No worries. I do
just want to see if you could keep the ball rolling here without me.
Well, of course, it's a Canadian way. We got sometimes you got to stay out for an extra long shift. That's just the way it is.
It's a penalty kill.
I know. It's been tough, and it's been ready. But you know what, Grant? I was just saying to the audience that, in the last year, disclosure has become so polarizing. There are a group of people who are interested in this programming where they're already saying, I've had enough. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of Grant Cameron. I'm sick of Tom DeLonge. I'm sick of UFOs. I'm sick of this topic. Then there are those out there who are waving the To the Stars and Tom DeLonge banners saying, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for our entire lives. And then there's a group and a faction out there, which I would include this show, who are like, hold on a second here. This seems like we're being played a little bit, and I'm not very comfortable with that. And normally I would get everybody to get you to introduce yourself, but I mean, you're so well known on this show, I figured we would just run with it tonight. Which side of the ledger, Grant, as you try to stay as unbiased as possible, are you leaning towards on the whole disclosure movement?
Hang on here. What the heck's going on here? Hang on. I got what I'm basically on the middle. I've worked on the government thing for probably 30 years. The way I look at it is I don't see good guys in government, bad guys in government. I see just guys who are doing the job. So I believe that this has been orchestrated. And as I've pointed out before, I was around when Bill Moore started his circus. I interviewed Bob Pratt, who was the National Enquirer guy who wrote the book with him before the MJ-12 broke. Bill Moore helped me with my research. He's the guy that released the MJ-12 document, the Project Aquarius document, and it's basically the same story. It's like in government, people think the government is one unified organization. It's not. It's a bunch of infighting people. Everybody's trying to cut each other's throats. They're trying to get each other's money. There's all sorts of different views. All you have to do is look at the U.S. Congress to see that, somebody can make a speech, and depending whether you're watching Fox or MSNBC, it's like they're in two different rooms. I mean, they're completely different. So that's why I see the UFO community, or the UFO movement, is that there are people inside the government who are playing on their beliefs. Now, some people want it out. I did an interview with Clifford Stone today, and unfortunately I was trying to tape it, and I messed up the tape. I didn't get the tape. But he was talking about this. He's one of the guys who they've leaked material to. Tom DeLonge, they're leaking. Bill Moore, they were leaking. And the way you leak it is and I always bring this up, is there's three different options you can do. So you can make a disclosure, which means you stand up and you say, okay, this is what's going on. Here's who's here. This is the whole story. They're not doing that. There's no way. Otherwise, they'd send the president up and tell you what's going on. So they're not disclosing, and they're not covering up. Because if they were to cover up, they do exactly what the Canadian government does. What does the Canadian government do on UFOs? I haven't got the foggiest notion. What does the British government do on UFOs? I haven't got the foggiest notion. Swiss government, Australian government, I have no idea. This is only an American situation where you have these whistleblowers and you have these people who are running around with documents and stuff like that. So what I say they're doing is there's people who want the story, and all stories out. They want history to be told. Like you have the Roadrunners, they were putting pressure on the government. They wanted their story told, that they had built the U-2, the SR-71, and then the CIA allows them to come out and start talking about this. And you saw just a couple of years ago, the CIA actually has not a news conference, but they have a panel at the nuclear museum in Las Vegas, where I've been. And they start talking about UFOs, and they're talking about, Area 51, which was never on the map. So basically, that's what I say. You've got these people inside the government who want it out, and you have people who are believe it's demonic. They don't want it out. You have people who think there's national security. We got to keep it from the Russians. They don't want it out. So you have these infighting things, and so you have people feeding DeLonge. And the way they do the thing is, so they're not disclosing, they're not covering up. So they're doing this half-baked thing. Well, not half-baked thing. They put it out, and then you have to alter everything to get plausible deniability. So take a look at To the Stars. Here's what they do. They make the big announcement on December 16th, and everybody always gets it messed up. I keep reminding people it wasn't the New York Times. It was the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico all went the same day with a story that took each of them 2 months to research. This is not an overnight cut and paste news story that they did. They had all these witnesses. They had inside contacts inside the Pentagon who were confirming that this ATIP program had run. So they all went the same day, which means it was coordinated. Somebody inside the government coordinated all these three agencies to go at the same time. They all played along, and that's the way the government works with the New York Times. So if you're a New York Times reporter, they'll come and say, we'd rather you not run this story, and we've given you stuff. We'll give you some stuff. And so you're feeding them stories, and they're able to break different stories. And then when you need a story covered, you say, okay, we need you to drop this story, don't run with the story, hold it for a little while, take this part of the story out or whatever. So these guys are being sort of maneuvered, manipulated or whatever. So when they tell the New York Times, Washington Post, and Politico to do the story, they all do the story. So they put it out. But the thing is, then you have the plausible deniability. So when it comes out, they say, okay, we got this ATIP program. So then John Greenwald, myself, Damon Steer, who was the guy who asked Hillary Clinton the question, everybody starts filing FOA. Everybody goes to the Pentagon. And Damon Steer came back almost day one. And I said, file an FOA. You're a reporter. You're on top of this thing. And he phones the Pentagon, and they say, I can absolutely maintain we did not release those videos. Did not release the videos, and we have no records of any such program. And so then the plausible deniability. So the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Politico would not have gone with that story unless they had inside sources inside the Pentagon that they'd used for other stories, that they trusted, that said, yes, this is for real, this actually did happen. So this plausible deniability starts. You put the story out, then you pull it back. So then you can't confirm the documents. You can't confirm the videos. Why are the videos so short? Who's leaking the documents? And it goes, Elizondo says, well, I didn't leak them. To the Stars didn't leak them. They're coming from the government. And then he's asked, I believe, a couple weeks ago at the MUFON conference in Philadelphia, they say to him, well, who leaked them? And he said, well, the government. And they said, well, who in the government? And he said, I'm afraid I can't answer that. You have to ask the government. So you hit this dead end. Now you have this latest release, and I don't know if you've followed this latest release, which just absolutely blows me away. There's this new release. So there's this big controversy about Elizondo, and it started mostly by John Greenwald, who says, there's no resignation letter. If this guy resigned, I should be able to get the resignation letter. This can't be classified. And he starts fighting about this fact that they haven't gotten the resignation letter. So then suddenly you get this story. Did you hear the story about with Chris Mellon's website and being hacked and him putting these documents on there? This happened.
I did hear about the documents going on his website. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they come down. So this Tom DeLonge has done this numerous times. Tom DeLonge does this all the time. You put something on Twitter or on Facebook, and you pull it down 15 minutes later. And I've asked people. I said, they're doing this for a reason. There's some. This is an intelligence thing. Tom DeLonge is not doing this. And that's what they did. So this apparently, and what the stories I hear, and you can tell, this is garbage. These cover stories. So they say he accidentally put it on his website. He had all these documents. So there's the Lou Elizondo letter, and the reason that they're doing the Lou Elizondo letter is because they were under attack. They're under attack that their big star is Lou Elizondo. And he's the guy that's doing all the PR. He's going to all the big newspapers and stuff. And suddenly he's under attack that he's the scammer because there's no retirement letter. He didn't retire, all this kind of stuff. So they leaked the Lou Elizondo letter. However, as soon as I saw it, I knew it was the same thing as MJ-12. What happened with the MJ-12 document back in the 1980s, and this is a very controversial document that people are still fighting about. What happened was on the first page of this document, it was supposed to have been a briefing document that was prepared by Kennedy for Eisenhower as he came in on this whole program about the 12 guys that ran the program and stuff. On the first page, the date stamp on the first page of the MJ-12 document was a wrong format. That wasn't used by the government. It was used by Bill Moore in his writings. It was a bizarre date format. And the MJ-12 document had the date stamp on there that looked like it was Bill Moore's. So as soon as everybody saw that, they said, oh, Bill Moore hoaxed the document. It's a hoax. Everybody runs for the hills. And the whole idea of MJ-12 gets out. And everybody says it's a hoax. They take off. But the idea gets out. So this is exactly what happened here. As soon as I saw the Lou Elizondo letter, and I haven't even read it, I just saw it. Immediately I noticed. It's an official resignation letter from Lou Elizondo to the Secretary of Defense, Mattis. And it's got no date on it. And it's like, you do not write an official letter on Office of the Undersecretary of Defense without a date on it. And then on the bottom, I pulled a bunch. All you got to do is go Office Undersecretary of Defense memo. You can pull these things up by the hundreds, and they all look exactly the same. They got a date on them, and at the bottom they have this little sort of a little stamp on that's from the, I guess, Department of Defense. It's not on Lou Elizondo's letter. So again, what they do is they leak the letter, the vast majority of the letter, and they screw it up. So they take the date off, they take off this thing off the bottom, and then you can say, well, it's a hoax. And I immediately picked up the fact there's no date. And then people say, oh, it's a hoax. It's somebody scamming us. And they run off, and yet you've got to realize they've released the letter. So they released the letter. The same thing as they put out this list of contracts. If you remember, Hal Putoff was at, and I don't know if you saw it. A few people saw it. It was on, you can buy it or rent it online. This is the presentation he gave at the remote viewing conference in Las Vegas. And on there, I got to see it one time, and I was doing screenshots. Unfortunately, I didn't get the screenshot when he shows all the different programs. And he actually lists off exactly which programs, these 37 programs. So what he did is he contracted out. He's sort of the head guy. He contracts out to all these different Lockheed, Eric Davis got some contracts, Air Force got some contracts. And what he's basically looking at is different subjects 50 years from now. So that was the thing. Okay, you take wormholes. What kind of technology do you think we're going to have in 50 years in terms of wormholes or metals or all these different things? And he puts this thing up on the screen. So this is one of the documents that was supposedly leaked with this Chris Mellon thing. And Hal Putoff immediately, I guess, is contacted about this. And he said, they're not right. If you want to see the right list, go to this presentation that he made, and that's true because I saw the presentation. He lists them, so this is nothing new. It's just they've got it all mixed up. He said it may be an old list of the programs that we contracted for, but the list isn't accurate, which means again they changed the whole thing. So it's all changed, and then you got this cover story. So the cover story is, oh well, somebody hacked Mellon's website. And then Mellon accidentally put them on the website, and it's like, no, they're doing the same thing. It's like SSDD. It's like, same, different day that Stephen King came up with. It was in one of his books, and that's what it is. It's the same thing. They just recycle the same thing. Intelligence agencies, people have to remember, these guys have run these programs since like World War II. They know what they're doing. They know exactly how to do it. And I was told, and I can't prove it, but what I was told when the MJ-12 document was coming out is that there is more money spent, like you get these black budget programs, there is more money spent on security for the program than for the program. The vast majority of the money goes to security to protect the program. So these guys know exactly what they're doing. They're not making any mistakes. They've run this thing. And then so I'm talking to people. The guy that brought it to me, I don't know if you ever interviewed him, is Alien Protocol. This guy, Buddy, out of New York, and I got to know him, and I said, well, why don't you release the rest of these documents? Because there's an unredacted Nimitz report. I said, well, why don't you release it? Oh, it's got names in it. And I said, well, it's been leaked. It's not going to be real if you hold it. Now that they're going to burn you. And I said to him, you're like during the Bill Moore days. What they did in the Bill Moore days was they leaked the thing to somebody. So they'll take somebody with a security clearance. So what they did in the 1980s is Bill Moore would give all the documents to a guy by the name of Lee Graham. Now, Lee Graham worked for Aerojet, and he had a secret security clearance. So when you work for a contractor, and this I always maintain with whistleblowers. To me, whistleblowers are all full of shit. There's no way, because you don't walk out with secrets. They can get you immediately. And I told this Alien Protocol guy, he was talking about this thing, oh, they're leaking this, and I've talked to a lawyer, and they may arrest me. I sent him an article that had been done, or a video thing that had been done by Rachel Maddow. And she has this sort of whistleblower line on MSNBC, send us all your documents, anything leaks and stuff like that. And I guess she gets some pretty interesting stuff comes through there and breaks these stories. So she gets this document. She said was so classified. It was so scary. She could not get anybody in an intelligence agency or an advisor to look at it, because if you look at it and it turns out to be true, then you're in trouble. So nobody would even look at the document. And it was sort of a long story, but they determined that the document had been folded, that you could actually see on this document had been folded. And it was a setup. So what it was a document that they wanted MSNBC to leak. And when they leaked it, they would show that it was a fake document, and she'd get burned. They were trying to burn her. And they did all this analysis on this document. And what she pointed out when they did all the analysis is that the woman who leaked the document was this contractor. She just went to jail about 2 weeks ago, or finally sentenced. She was in jail before the document was actually leaked. So they leaked it. She leaked it to a news agency. The news agency went to National Security Agency to get verification. This is a real document. National Security came back and said, we want you to redact the following portions of the letter. And boom, she was arrested same day. They hadn't even released the letter yet. So I said to this buddy, I said, you got to realize there's nobody walking around with secrets. If you have a secret, the FBI will be at your door within minutes, and they're going to arrest you. They're not going to fool around. This is not something where there's a bunch of people leaking documents. So that's what you got to remember when you see these leaks of documents, that the chances of this being somebody inside the government who has sort of evaded the secrecy stuff. All these guys take lie detector tests. They know exactly with this girl that leaked this document. They had her within minutes, because all they had to do is they grab all the I guess they intercept all the communications to the TV station or wherever it was, a paper or whatever, and they can see exactly how many contractors have talked to them. And they knew within minutes exactly who had got the document, who had access to that document, because they have control numbers on these documents. And when you see a top secret document, you've got to sign that you saw the document. So right. They had the person had seen. So all this stuff, people don't realize it's so carefully controlled. So what I would say is when you see all this kind of leaking stuff, it's not really good guys, bad guys. It's basically some sort of program that they're running. And they know exactly what they're doing, and it's not classified material. It's been altered. All this stuff has been altered all the way through. And I said they've been doing it for 70 years. They did it big time during the Bill Moore thing. In the 1990s, if you remember the 1990s, they had what was called the new MJ-12 document. And again, the same thing. There were people say, oh, there was one, and there was a problem with the document. Everybody say, all this stuff is hoax. They ran for the hills. And they said, this is, again, this is Richard Doty. And I said, you got to realize, people didn't realize, there was 3,700 pages of documents. There was an entire manuscript that had these stamps on it, and they actually tracked down the manuscript. It was written in the 1950s by some reporter guy, and we tracked, all this stuff. But all the stuff had been altered. All the stuff had been changed, and that's the way they do it. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to put out some sort of deal. Now, people can say, okay, it's a disinformation program, it's to throw us off, but it's not to throw us off. I maintain it's not to throw us off, because if you wanted to throw the people off, you just shut your mouth and nobody would know what the heck's going on. What they're doing is they're doing this gradual thing where Kit Green described it at one point. Kit Green was the guy who ran the CIA Weird Desk at one point.
Right.
And he's interviewed by a guy by the name of Pilkington, who wrote this book, The Magic Men, or I can't remember. It was a big book in the States. And he believed this was all disinformation. He said, oh, just cover for Russian programs and stuff like that, until he met Kit Green. He interviews him at Wayne State University in Detroit, and he said, the hair was standing up the back of my neck. I could feel myself sweating. I could not believe what this guy was saying. What Kit Green says is, well, what would you do if you had to run this program? What would you do if you actually had to do it? It's fine to sit on the outside and say, okay, this is all garbage or whatever. And he said, well, what you do is you write a bunch of memes. Oh, the aliens are here. They're eating our kids and all this kind of stuff. You put all this stuff out. And then if the story breaks, then it comes back and it says, oh, no, it's just some extraterrestrials or something visiting. And the people will immediately say, what, you mean they're not eating our kids? No, they're not eating the kids. And they go, what the hell's a big deal then? And this is this idea that they're influencing people's thoughts. And you got to remember, there's people inside the government all the time who are releasing material. There's these declassification, what do you call them? Programs where after so many years, it has to be classified to this and declassified, and after 25 years, it has to be out. And I just did a thing on the internet about 2 weeks ago on a book called The President's Book of Secrets. And this is about this presidential daily briefing. This guy was one of the presidential briefers, and he wrote about this presidential daily briefing, and it's the most top secret document in the country. It's the briefing that's given to the president every morning. It's between 2 and 20 pages. The latest top secret material that happened overnight, what's happening around the world and stuff like that. And these things, I remember years ago trying to get these things through an FOA. And what I thought was, like when the Roswell crash happened, you get the presidential daily briefing the day after. You can see whether he had been briefed on what exactly was going on. I couldn't get anything. And I realized after I read this guy's book, and I was completely out of the loop, they've declassified like 4 presidents. I mean, a lot of these things have been declassified, these most top secret documents. So this stuff does eventually get out. Now, the reason that they're going to put it into this bizarre thing where you really can't tell what's real and what's not real, and the reason they do that is if say, Dave, you get a leak, or you're running, say, a movie on the CIA. Now, they're going to come to you. They have 2 options. They can come and kill you, or they can come to you and manage you. So they come to you and say, Dave, I hear you're doing a movie on the CIA. That's pretty interesting. I'm from the CIA. Have you ever been to the CIA, Dave? Would you like to go for a tour? Maybe that would help you do your movie. And they manage you. So they move you away from the classified material towards what and every program they spin that. So
that's just amazing. That's just absolutely amazing. Grant, I want to ask you in regards to some of the outside players. We always hear about, people like DeLonge, Colm Kelleher. We hear about Hal Puthoff, Luis Elizondo. What about some of these players that are on the outside? And I'm going to throw a couple of names at you here. And I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm not saying they're involved, but I find the irony of the way that there is this whole movement going on a little suspicious. I'm thinking Jeremy Kenyon Lockyer Bell, who just released the movie The Hunt for the Skinwalker. George Knapp, who is an intrepid reporter for KLAS in Las Vegas, and Leslie Kean, the author, who seems to now be putting books out under the To the Stars Academy.
Yeah. They're simply what's called, you're in the journalism, it's called an embedded journalist. That was done in Vietnam. If you go back to the Vietnam War, any reporter could go wherever they want. And they got the little kid, with the napalm, and the kid's skin is burning off, got no clothes, running down the street. They got the My Lai massacre, these people dead all over the place, just mayhem. So what you do is you restrict the ability of the reporters to move around and do stuff. And what you do is you basically use what's called an embedded journalist. Now, they've been doing this since World War II. William Lawrence, who was the science writer for the New York Times, people may not realize this. When they did the atomic bomb stuff, everybody thinks it was top secret. But no, the head science reporter for the New York Times was brought in. He was told what was going on. He was briefed. He was told about the tests and stuff. And he was actually on the second plane that went in and dropped the second bomb, the atomic bomb in Japan. Now, the first one, what his job was, he was on the inside, so he's an embedded journalist. So it's the old deal. It's like, I'm on the inside, and that's what everybody does. Everybody gets sucked into this deal. I'm from the government. I've got top secret UFO documents, and you go, really? Oh, and I've picked you to give you the documents to, and everybody goes, oh, that's cool. I'm on the inside now. That's what Bill Moore did. That's what they all do. So you get on the inside, and you get the story. So George Knapp, and he just did an interview a couple of days ago, where he was told, and I don't know if you heard the story, he was told, like, when the ATIP thing happened, he said, I'm going to get the date, was it 2 days or 2 weeks after Bigelow signed the contract in 2007, he knew exactly what was going on. He knew the Defense Intelligence Agency had been to Skinwalker Ranch. They had discovered stuff. There was $22 million. He knew the whole thing. So for 10 years, he said, I had to button my lip. And he sat there, and he was very quiet, and he didn't say anything. And then when they went to the New York Times, Knapp says he was pissed off. So he goes to Bigelow, and he goes to Tom DeLonge, and he went and he said, what's the deal? I've been sitting on this thing for 10 years. Why don't I get to break this thing? And they said, you're not the New York Times. We realize you did this kind of stuff, but if you do it, the New York Times may not do the story. And he said, okay, I'll go along. And he said, there'll be enough left over for me to report on. So he actually was the inside guy, and he kept quiet because he was on the inside. So Bigelow brings him in. Bigelow tells him what's going on. And he said, for 10 years, he sat like a fly on the wall. He said, I know more about this story than anybody, and it's a payoff. So you work on the inside. Same as Leslie Kean. Leslie Kean gets in with John Podesta. She's friends with John Podesta. John Podesta files an FOIA for her on the Kecksburg crash. He's helping her and stuff like that. So she gets on the inside. She actually wrote me a letter. I don't know if you ever told you the story. She wrote me a letter when I put out the Hillary Clinton website. She was very upset at me. She wrote me this email, really critical email, saying, what do you think you're doing? You're ruining it for everybody. What do you think you're going to get her to talk? Is that what you're doing? And she says, this is terrible. And I said, Leslie, you've never wanted to be in this game. You never wanted to be you're too good for the UFO thing. You should go and research something else if you don't like it. And what I found out later, it appeared that they almost had an interview with Bill Clinton. So it was the old deal. It's like everybody believes they're on the inside, that we've got this scoop. So when somebody tells you to be quiet, and that's what's happened with these latest documents. I say, why are these documents not really released? And the one, they actually, Buddy was telling me, the one, he said he was coming back to his truck in New York City. He said, there's this guy putting these envelopes on his car, on his truck, and the guy sees him and he quickly takes off, and Buddy watches him. He goes racing off and he jumps in his car, and somebody else is driving and he takes off. And then he's got these 2 envelopes full of documents on his truck. And it's like, and so now Buddy's on the inside, and he feels kind of, like I've got the inside scoop here. And I keep telling him, I said, you got to realize, this is a game. You're the pigeon. That's what they used to call Lee Graham. Lee Graham would take these top secret documents into his thing and report them. He said, I've got a security clearance. He has these documents. And that was how they were forcing these documents. So you got the embedded journalists who get the insight. So Corbell gets Knapp said he was trying to do that documentary on the Skinwalker Ranch for 10 years. And Bigelow said no, you can do the book, but you can't do the documentary because we don't want 5,000 people outside the gates of, of the ranch trying to get in there. If you're reporting on this from day to day, we need to keep this secret while we're investigating the ranch. And as soon as they were finished investigating the ranch and the story was out on the ATIP program, then they said, okay, now you can do it. And so then they gave it to Corbell. So he's on the inside. So these people are all working basically as embedded journalists. They're helping. It's like if you were to take the story, you'd ask all these serious questions. Okay, I want to release this. You can't stop me. I'm going to release this. And these embedded journalists will play the game exactly the way they're told to play the game, and they get to break the story. You and I don't get to break the story because we're rogue people out on the edges, and we're going to do whatever we want. So it's this game, and that's what happened with this guy from the New York Times. So when they detonated the atomic bomb, the Trinity test in New Mexico, it was William Lawrence who put out the news release that said there was a ammunition depot that had blown up, and that was the cover story. And it was put in the New York Times, and of course everybody believed it. And then when he was on the plane, the second plane that dropped the atomic bomb, he put out the statement that the Japs had it coming. So he gets, on one hand, he's doing their job, and he gets to break these stories. He won the Pulitzer Prize, and that's the way the game is played. You work as an embedded journalist. If you don't work as an embedded journalist, good luck. You're on the outside. You're not going to get to see anything. And everybody wants to be on the inside. And the UFO community is extremely guilty of this. All these people, you have Project Camelot's got 200 inside witnesses. And they're all talking to me. And they're all telling me what's going on. And it's like garbage they are. This is all garbage. I've never had a whistleblower come to me, probably because they know I'd probably go and report them to the FBI. I'd first ask them, why are you not sitting in jail? And then I'd go report them to the FBI for leaking classified material. There's no classified material as far as I'm concerned that's being leaked. It's all altered material, and that's how they do it. And somebody wants the story out, so they want to gradually tell you what's going on. They want to let you know, but you can't spill the milk. Once you spill the milk, you can't put it back in the glass. So it's this very carefully controlled release of material.
What about MUFON? What is their role in this? And last week when I had Lorian Fenton on the show, I asked her the question because a few weeks ago, George Knapp had both Luis Elizondo and Jan Harzan on the program. And
okay, give me again. Who had who on?
George Knapp on Coast to Coast had Jan Harzan and Luis Elizondo on at the same time. And it wasn't until about an hour and a bit into the interview where they were talking like it was old hat that MUFON and To the Stars were sharing information.
Yeah,
and that to me,
the thing.
And that to me reminded me of the whole Bigelow thing.
Well, yeah, you get compromised because that you want to be sort of you want to get in, you want to get material, and so you make these sort of backdoor deals. If like, oh, they're helping, so we'll give you this, and you feel like you're an insider. You're getting stuff that nobody else is getting. We've got the inside track, and you start to trust people. What I heard from Jennifer Stein, I'm interviewing her next week, that Jan Hartson knew Jim Semivan. They were on a panel or on a think tank together. So you have these people that that have intelligence backgrounds or who have interacted and stuff, and they sort of become friends. So that's what happened with MUFON and when they did the Star Team thing. So somebody comes along and you're this poor researcher and you've got no money and whatever, and Bigelow comes along and says, I'll give you whatever it was, $750,000, whatever, and I get access to the files, and the only thing you're going to investigate with the Star Team is hard evidence cases where we can be on site right away, or metal material and stuff like that. I'm not interested in lights in the sky and stuff like that. So he gives the money, and it's like a 25-cent hooker. I mean, they just drop and do the bidding, and because everybody's into trying to get in on the inside or get money or whatever, so people will compromise their better judgment to do this kind of stuff. And so I've never had an inside source. I've never been threatened. And my rule of thumb is I'm always one step removed from my victim. So I've been after Ron Pandolfi at the CIA, who's the head guy, for 25 years, 20 years at least. And I watch him very carefully, but I've never talked to the guy. I've had like interactions where he'll take a shot at me in a this Open Minds forum. He'll take a shot, or I hear he calls me John the Baptist because he's making this reference that I'm making the way for Tom DeLonge, and then he calls me a loon. Then he says I'm not a loon. I'm just doing the best I can. And I hear these things, but I'm getting it from people around him. So I know a lot of people very close to him who interact with him, and I listen to everything he says, every email that leaks out of there, and I'm watching very carefully. But I don't interact with the guy because I don't want to get in a situation where, like, you and I are friends. So you tell me, okay, this is a secret story, and you got to keep it secret. Suddenly you've compromised me. It's the same thing. It's like, oh my God, Dave's my friend. He told me this story. People should know about this, but because Dave's my friend, I got to be, keep it to myself. And a lot of people will do this. And I had one prime example. I'll give you a prime example. This is a guy that was associated with To the Stars, and I still, because he'll just flip out if I mention who he is, but had come to me and said, "You get Jimmy Carter's phone number?" And I said, "No, I haven't got Jimmy Carter's phone. Why would I have Jimmy Carter's phone number?" And he said, "Oh." I said, "Well, what do you want Jimmy Carter's phone number for?" He said, "Oh, we're working on the Holloman Air Force Base film, and I'm trying to get the thing, and I was contacting the former presidents about whether they'd seen it in their presidential briefing. The Holloman Air Force Base film is this rumored story that took place either in 64 or 71, where this UFO lands at Holloman Air Force Base. And I actually talked to Clifford Stone. I'll maybe talk about that later, but actually Clifford Stone had the film at one point. So this is film of this UFO lands. These aliens get out. They greet base officials. They get in in two cars. They drive off, and the craft is put in a hangar. And this whole thing is filmed. And it apparently is shown to the presidents when they're briefed. So this guy had phoned Bush, and he was the organization of former intelligence officers, and Ford and Bush were both in this organization. So that's how he had their phone numbers. That's how he could talk to them and say, "I'm on this, former intelligence," and they sort of had this inside, trust each other, whatever. And they both confirmed, yeah, they had seen the film. And so he was trying to find out whether Jimmy Carter had seen the film. He was trying to phone him up. So he tells me this stuff, and then he says, "Oh, it's confidential." He just says confidential, and then I told one person, and it started to leak. And then he came back to me and said, he's just furious. Like, this is confidential and stuff. And it's like, well, you should tell me that before you tell me this stuff. It's like you tell somebody something, and it happens all the time. They say, "Okay, here's some story," and then as soon as the story's over, say, "Oh, but you can't tell anybody." Well, you should have told me that before you told me the story. And in the UFO community, we have this big thing. Like, everybody's got a secret. Everybody's got a little inside thing that they've got. They got some little source in the government. And it's the same thing. You can't have a source inside the government. If you're inside the government, you're like Bill Moore. You're like Tom DeLonge. And what Tom DeLonge said was, he went to the government, and he said to the government, "You're screwing this thing up. I know you're doing this slow disclosure thing, and you're messing it up. The young people aren't going to believe you." And so he showed to them, "You need me." And that was true. Because they look at you and they say, "Can you help get this message out? And can you be trusted to keep your mouth shut when you're told to keep your mouth shut?" So if you're an embedded journalist, you're going to do exactly what you're told, because you're going to eventually get the story. And if you don't, suddenly, boom, they cut you loose, and you're like you and me, scraping around on the edges trying to figure out what's going on. These guys are on the inside, but they're allowed to go when they want. And they do this in all military now. They put an embedded journalist in to a unit that moves with the unit, and they only report on what they're allowed to report. They can't just wander around in the field of battle and stuff like that. This is what they're doing. And the UFO community is very guilty. So when someone comes to MUFON and says, "We're going to give you $750,000, everybody goes. Everybody says, "Okay, great." And then they say, "We got to sign a non-disclosure agreement." Everybody signs a non-disclosure agreement except for Alejandro Rojas. And he was the public relations guy for MUFON, and he realized something was wrong, and he would not sign it. So they would have cut him out. He didn't know what was going on. He didn't know the ATIP thing. But the people that signed the non-disclosure agreement for MUFON would have known right in 2007 that this money was coming from the government, that was coming from Bigelow. It wasn't coming from Bigelow, it was coming from someone else. And Bigelow had even said, "This is not my money. It's money from somebody else." I always thought it was some other big businessman or some intelligence guy, agency or whatever, and it was actually coming from the government, and they were running this major program. So that's how they manipulate people, and that's how they control people. And they're doing the same thing with news reporters. So they'll go into a news reporter and they'll say, "Okay, we'll help you with this story, help you with this story," and the person's in the bag. So when it comes time that your source inside the Pentagon comes and says, "Dave, you know, you got this story. I'd like you to hold it for 6 months. We really wouldn't like. And you either have one of two choices. You run with the story, and that's the end of your source inside the Pentagon, or you do what you're told, and you say, okay, well, when can I run it? And that's what George Knapp. They said, okay, as soon as this thing goes, then you can start reporting on it. And now he's starting to talk about it, but he couldn't go with the initial story, which was given in the New York Times because it would have a bigger impact.
So when it comes to all of these secondary players, do they all know that they're being used by this
Well,
group?
everybody doesn't. That's the thing. Everybody is being used, but everybody thinks they're not being used. So Tom DeLonge, they asked him that question. They said, well, you're like Bill Moore. And he said, no, it's different. You know, Bill Moore had these people that were offering him material, and they're not offering me. I've contacted these people, and it's absolutely not true. And it's the biggest thing I have against this To the Stars. I have nothing against To the Stars, Tom DeLonge, or anything. But the way they've spun this thing was that Tom DeLonge went out and got all these people. And I can absolutely 100% guarantee you he did not phone up General McCaslin, find him in the phone book and say, hey, I want you to talk about UFOs. That's not how it happened. The way it happened is the way they suck you into this thing. So Tom DeLonge is into this kind of stuff. And when he went to Lockheed, this proves it. When he first went to Lockheed at Area 51, and they brought him inside this facility and talked to him about this sort of stuff, the one guy before Weiss, the head guy, came out of the back room, he said to him, what about that conspiracy stuff you were doing? Now, most people don't know that Tom DeLonge had the name's going to escape me, 2012, strange something. It was a conspiracy website, and it had every crazy rumor in the world on there. It was just like, like the National Enquirer of UFOs. And he was running this website. So they actually said to him, they said, what about that conspiracy stuff you're in? And Tom DeLonge goes, oh, well, he's trying to talk his way out of this thing because he's saying, I'm this respectable guy. I'm your guy. I can do what you want. I'm going to treat you guys with respect. I'll get he says, I'll actually get everything I put through, I will get your approval. So what happens is, they know he's into UFOs. He's with Greer. He starts with Greer. He's a good alien guy, and then he gets this idea that all the aliens are evil, they're bad news. But first he starts with Greer. Greer gives him 35 hours of the witness testimony. And Tom DeLonge takes this stuff, and he's hiding it under the bed. And he says suddenly his phone starts going crazy. He moves 3 or 4 times, and the phone, he's having all these problems with the phone. He figures the government is watching me. They're out to get me, whatever. And they did know who he was. So they knew about the conspiracy website, and they had this thing. They knew because Greer, it says he's got 1,000 witnesses. Now, do you think Greer actually found those 1,000 witnesses, or is Greer this high-level guy? So they say, like, for example, if you say you have 100 witnesses or whatever, and you have 100 legitimate guys who are giving you some material, what's the easiest way to throw Dave Scott off? You give him 100 new witnesses who tell you completely different stories. I'm here from the, Defense Intelligence Agency, and you make up a bunch of stories, and all you're doing is throwing mud in the water to confuse the issue. So what happens with Tom DeLonge is they know he's into the UFO thing, and he contacts one guy whose father or somebody works for Lockheed, and he says, did your dad ever talk about UFOs? Or the uncle or dad or whatever it was? And the guy say, hell yeah. And then he goes, wow, cool. And then this guy phones him up on a video conference and says, don't ever get in the car. This is effing important stuff. You don't get in the car. I have to tell you, get in the car. And they use the fear thing. That's how it works. They impress you like you're special. This is dangerous. You're on the inside of this thing. And then immediately gets this phone call. And this is the whole key. This is the hook. Like Bill Moore. They came to Bill Moore and said, you're the only guy who knows what you're talking about. Bill Moore's, yeah, that's true. And then they give him another phone call. You're the only guy who knows what you're talking about. And then they got him on the hook. So they go to Tom DeLonge and they say, we'd like you to come to Lockheed, and they're having a barbecue in the parking lot of the headquarters, and we'd like you to introduce the president. Now, does that sound like a setup? I mean, suddenly you got some rock stars going to go introduce the head of Lockheed. They know this is the whole thing. So he said, well, yeah. If I could have 5 minutes with this guy, I'll come and introduce him. And so he's being used. He goes in there. He introduces the president. And he says to the president, he said, I got this idea. He's not used to talking UFOs. I got this idea for public affairs and something that would help you guys, whatever. And they know where he's going. They don't have to use the word UFOs. They know where he's going. And they said, oh, yeah, can I talk to you in a couple of weeks? And he said, yeah, sure. And they invite him to Area 51 in 2 weeks. He's got no security clearance. He's got nothing. He gets to Area 51. He's sitting there. They confront him on the whole thing about the conspiracy website. Weiss comes out. They start talking about consciousness. All the head scientist wants to talk about his consciousness, and they basically go, and then he's given the pitch. You need me. And that's true. They needed him because he has this massive audience with young kids. He has this massive Twitter account and stuff like that, so they can move the message. So he's going to help them get the message, but they're going to give him the message the way they want it to be put out. So they say to him, okay, go home. He gets an email. We want you to meet outside the Pentagon at this time. He goes there and he meets these two intelligence guys from the CIA. They're sitting in this room and they say, things like this do not happen at Congress. They do not happen in the White House. They happen when guys like us decide the time has come to move the ball down the field. And they send him to NASA. And so he goes to NASA, and they send him to Ames, and Ames sends him to the general, and then the general links him up with all the other people. And that's how it happens. You get one person, and they link you in. They bring another person. They bring another person, and they say, this guy is there. And when he goes to talk, the only one he did was Podesta. He phones up Podesta, gives him the pitch. You need me. There's this message. You guys are trying to disclose. You need the young people, whatever. And Podesta says, well, I'm kind of busy now. Give me a call in a couple of months. I'm busy right now. And in a couple of months, Tom figures, I didn't buy the thing. He didn't, bite. And so he doesn't phone him back. And then Podesta phones him back and he said, okay, I'm ready to get in. I'm ready to play. This is very important. I need you to fly to Washington, D.C. And so what happens, according to me, is Podesta goes around and says, who's talking to Tom DeLonge? Is someone talking to Tom DeLonge? We got something going on here? And they say, yeah, we got this thing. We're going to use this disclosure thing. We're going to drop some information. And so he gets permission, and he said, okay, I'll play the game too. And he phones up Tom DeLonge, and he says, I want you to come to Washington. I'm ready to play. And that's how it works. So Tom DeLonge is in his best interest, but he thinks he's actually running the show. He actually thinks he's not being used. He's being used like everybody else. There isn't, as I said, there's nobody out there who is going to give you classified material. They're going to spin it. They're getting the material out, but everybody's being used. And people have to realize that when you get a government official come to you and say, I just got your phone number. I think you're a nice guy. I've got some classified material. I'm going to tell you the most highly classified secret in the United States, which is UFOs. I'm going to tell you what's going on in Area 51. You've got to be suspicious as to what's going on. And that's the bottom line, is that everybody's being used. Everybody's being played on this thing because that's how they do it. They don't want to put it out. If they want to put it out, they'd stand the president or the CIA director out. And I'll give you another example. Billy Cox, who is the Florida reporter who I was dealing with in the 1980s. He wrote his first articles. He had a very unbelievable UFO sighting when he was very young. And he got to be this reporter, and he would do this blog all the time. Nobody paid any attention to him, UFO blog. And he gets, he goes after the Chase Brandon story when Chase Brandon comes out. So Chase Brandon comes out and he says, Roswell is real, it was extraterrestrial, and there were bodies. And this is the guy that was the Hollywood representative for the CIA. So he comes out, Cox gets involved in that story, and then Robert Gates, who was one of the CIA directors, goes to Florida in 2013, and Cox asks him the question, the UFO question. What about Chase Brandon? He worked for you, why is Chase Brandon talking about this? UFOs for real stuff. And Cox said he could actually feel the reporters moving away from him as he's asking this question, because nobody wanted to be around him. And Gates says, I've had every security clearance there is. And if anything had happened, I would know what happened. And I've never seen anything, one shred of evidence. Gives the old standard line. So that's 2013. The day after Trump is inaugurated, Brennan, the guy who lost his security clearance, Trump pulled his security clearance, goes to Florida, and he's the former CIA director, Obama CIA director. He goes and to the same event. Cox goes to the same event and asks the same question, and he said, oh yeah, I've known we've been doing this program for a long time. I think it's very important. I think we really don't know what's going on, but I think we should investigate. So the whole thing changes. So the CIA directors are now told, now you can talk about it. Same as Putoff came out. He said, I've always talked about remote viewing. I've never talked about UFOs. This was a highly secret program. There has been releases, and I can now start to talk about it. And so they open this thing up. So that's what I say is when there's an opening, then these guys can talk about it. But as long as it's highly classified, as far as I'm concerned, when someone says to me, I've got a secret person inside the government who's giving me classified material, I told Buddy, I said, I think you should report this guy because there's a latest offer, and I don't want to get too much into it because it's still up in the air, was exactly the premise that I had said, that he was offered to be in on the inside and they would give him material and this kind of stuff. And I said, they know you're talking to me. That's what I say is going on. That's what Bill Moore is doing. That's this whole thing. And it's almost like they sort of threw this little offer to him. And he's saying, well, I don't think I'll play this game. And I said, well, yeah, you should play the game. Just document what you're doing. So don't go in there and think that you're like Tom DeLonge, like I know what's going on and I've got control of the situation. You've got to realize you're being played, document everything, record it, document it in video, and then when it's all over, when you can't get anything more, then you actually say, okay, this is what happened. I was given this. I talked to this person, whatever, and you drop the whole thing. You don't make any friends on the inside, because if you make friends on the inside, you're dead. You're dead in the water. As soon as you think like Tom DeLonge says, oh, these guys are my friends. I trust them. Same as Bill Moore said, oh, I trust these guys. They're telling me the truth and stuff. And that's a bad position to be in, because you've got to realize they're not handing out free classified material. If it's classified and they release it, they go to jail.
Boy, you hit the timing perfectly on that one, as we got to go to break here, Grant. You were counting down the seconds. Grant Cameron.
That was accidental. I just looked at the clock as I finished that. Okay.
No, it was perfect. Grant Cameron is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We are getting an update on the disclosure movement. We're going to get into the To the Stars Academy coming up in hour number 2, and we're also going to talk about the Paracon that Grant will be speaking at up here, put on by Spaced Out Radio in just a couple of weeks. We're going to find out a little bit more about that as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Hi there, this is Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm going to take you for a ride every Sunday night on Spaced Out Sundays. I'm going to set up your week with some strange tales from across North America, from psychic readings, Sasquatch, UFOs, to the most haunted locations. Come join me at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, and let's get weird together. I'd love for you to join me. Spaced Out Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
There's news, and there's The Encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything is an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Chris Zuger and Chris Cogswell are here for Reality Paranormal, where we break down the science behind everything. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We welcome back everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. And don't forget, you can find all of our archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Macrolepidoptera. What the hell is this, Bill? Macrolepidoptera. I have no idea what that means, but Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Don't forget, time is winding down for you to get your tickets for the first annual Caribou Paracon, presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th. You could go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now. And our keynote speaker is tonight's guest on Spaced Out Radio, Mr. Grant Cameron, whose website, presidentialufo.com, is right here, right now. Grant, I'm going to get you to turn your speaker back. I'm getting a little bit of feedback there.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good now. Yeah, we're good now. Okay.
There you go.
My friend, I'm so looking forward to you coming up here to beautiful British Columbia, into an area you haven't been in a long, long time, to speak about this highly important topic.
Yeah, I've never been there. I want to go. That's on my bucket list to go in that area there around where you are, Barkerville. So I've been to Vancouver quite a few times. Never rained when I was there. I don't think it rains in Vancouver, but I've never been to there. I've been to driven through a couple times, but not. I'm looking forward to it. One little change. I guess we should start making the change now. My website has actually changed. Okay. I'm not a technical type guy, so I have people help me with this. My assistant Des, I don't know if you ever interact with her, and there's a bunch of other people helping me. And it's now beyond presidentialufo.com, because they apparently couldn't use the same name. So presidentialufo.com, when they get it up, will be the archive site of all the presidential stuff. But it's beyond presidentialufo.com. And we've got some articles there. I would have had the interview with Clifford Stone today, which was, I just kicked myself with this technical stuff, because I had it. I went, wow, man, I got an interview with this guy. He was like talking about the Holloman Air Force Base film. What did the aliens look like? All this kind of stuff. This is a very famous film. And that Paula Harris had actually been there. And this event, I guess I should tell a story, because it's kind of an interesting story. Clifford Stone is one of these guys. They're sort of leaking stuff to him, because he's got one of these reputations. People don't know whether to believe him. He's not the most articulate guy in the world. Yet he's got 500,000 government documents. And I listened today, only made one mistake in terms of all the technical stuff. He talked about Bush refusing Ronald Reagan the UFO documents, and it was actually Jimmy Carter. But other than that, he knew he told me he produced a report for the Senate, 175 pages long, on Project Moondust and Blue Fly. He became famous for discovering these documents. And so he was going through all this stuff. And then I'd heard this story through Paula, that he had been given at the 50th anniversary of the Roswell thing. It was, you remember back in Roswell, there was even Bill Clinton talked about it. There's going to be a gazillion people there.
Right.
And I
remember that.
100,000 people went to Roswell on the 50th anniversary. So on that event, he didn't say, I didn't push him, but he didn't say who gave him the film, but he was given the Holloman Air Force Base film. And they actually had a projector set up in his room, and they said, you got 24 hours of this film. You can ask anybody you want. You can't tell them exactly what's on the film. Nobody's going to see it. Nobody's going to come. Nobody's going to view the thing. Paula Harris was the only one to his house, and Paula Harris apparently took a film, and on that film is the canister. And I said, Paula, I thought it was photographs. Now she says it's film. She's actually got a film of this Holloman Air Force Base canister on the coffee table, and she doesn't ask to see this film. And the next morning, he has to take it back to work, and he's told to leave it in his office. This guy, he tells this whole story about this guy coming to one of his assistants, security guy, and saying, I'd like to use the phone in the office. And he goes in, and the guy helps, and he grabs the film and starts going. And the guy says, you can't walk out with that. And he just said, shh, and he takes off. And they take this film back. And it was, the whole point was, and he was mentioning John Schmidt was invited. There was a bunch of people who are invited to see this, to come to his place. And exactly like the official had said, nobody's going to come. People always say they're interested in this stuff, but when it comes right down to it, nobody's going to come. So he had this film, and he said his wife had seen it. So I said, well, what'd your wife think? And he said, well, she didn't really have much reaction. She just said, oh, now I know it's real. I know why all these people are coming to the house, because he has his claim is he has a lot of government people come to him. He's given a lot of material and stuff like that. And so when I heard that Paula had this film that backs up this story, that he had this canister in 1975 with the Holloman Air Force Base film. So I asked him, what did the aliens look like? And he said they were human type aliens. And the one thing that he did, now I don't know if he's seen the Bob Emenegger film, but he said it starts off like you really can't see it. It's just a dot on the horizon as it's coming in. And I don't know if I told the story before on your show, but Bob Emenegger was a good friend of mine. And Bob Emenegger did this documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future in 1975. And he was fed a bunch of stuff by the government. He stated quite clearly that he was friends with Bob Haldeman, who was was the big aide to Nixon. There was a story that Linda Howe tells of Bob showing her a letter written by Nixon after it was over, saying, thanks for your cooperation on the project we worked on, or your discretion on the project we worked on. And Bob actually is given the Holloman Air Force Base film, and they're told they can put it in the film. So this is how they do this thing. They did it with Disney back in 56 as well. So they say, we want you to do this documentary. We have these other 8 documentaries on 3D holography, working with dolphins, working with dogs, all this sort of stuff for the military. After the Vietnam War, we're not seen in very good light, so we want you to do these documentaries, and we'd like you to put this UFO documentary and hide it under the rest. And Bob was not a big UFO guy. In fact, he didn't believe it at all. He went, what? You mean this is for real? And he said, I'll go along with it. So they do this documentary. They're fed the story of the CIA channeling an alien in 1959. They're given the Holloman Air Force Base film. Bob said he didn't see it. The security manager did see it. But anyway, so they get it. And then at the very end, they pull the film. And Bill Coleman at the Pentagon says the time isn't right. It's the Watergate thing. We can't release it at this time. You got to bring the film back. We can't use it. And when the film comes out, the documentary called UFOs Past, Present, and Future, which on the internet is called UFOs That Has Begun. It was re-released in 1979. You'll see on there, they have to do a storyboard thing on this Holloman Air Force Base story. And they say, this is an event that may have happened in the past or may happen in the future. And they tell this story about this UFO landing at Holloman Air Force Base. And the story is really true. And on that thing, they put in 8 seconds of the actual film in there. And it is exactly what Clifford Stone described to me this afternoon, which really gives me validation that he did see this film. Because all it does is shows this dot. You can see the hills of Haldeman, and this thing's coming in over the hills, and it's 8 seconds, and it looks like an orb, like a very bright. It's in 6 o'clock in the morning, apparently this happened, so it's light out. And this thing's coming, and then as it comes in, it lands, and this whole thing is filmed. And so when Clifford Stone described this, and it described exactly what Bob Emenegger confirmed to me, because I phoned up Bob and I said, Bob, I thought you said they took the film back. And he said, yeah. And he told me this story about these heavy set people in this small Datsun who put the canisters in the back seat, and they had to take all this film back to the Pentagon. And I said, but Bob, there's 8 seconds in the film. There's 8 seconds of Holloman Air Force Base film. Is that true? And there's this long hesitation. He goes, well, yeah. And I said, but you told me they took the film back, Bob. There's 8 seconds in there. And he said, well, it doesn't, it's just background. I said, what do you mean it's just background? And he said, well, it doesn't show anything. And that's the whole deal. It's not classified. So that's the same thing. When they release these films, like the To the Stars release these films, they have to make it unclassified. So I think they put the vacuum cleaner noise because I asked, I was doing an interview with Steve from LA. He's a fighter pilot. And I asked him, I said, you know that noise on the Nimitz video, you hear this sort of wind noise. I said, does that actually happen? Because when you're in a fighter jet, you have a mask on. And you're talking inside a mask, and it's sealed onto your face. So there should be no noise because it's all sealed off with this mask. And he said, no, there's no noise inside on when you're talking over the thing. And so that's what you do is you alter the film. And that's what Bob said. Bob was confirming to me is you just take 8 seconds. And he said it didn't show anything. So it means it's not the classified part. That's not classified. The classified part is when it actually lands and the aliens get out. So I said to Clifford Stone today, I said, so tell me, what did the aliens look like? And he said, well, actually it looked pretty human. They had red suits on with a sort of a hoodie thing on. And they had this yellow sort of a crest or a emblem on their uniform. And he said the cars were 1965 Fords. And Richard Doty puts out a story that happened in 64, which would indicate that his story isn't true. He said the event, Linda Howe got it from Richard Doty. He said it was 1964, that Bob Emenegger was saying it was May of 1971. He said, no, it was 64. And if Clifford Stone is right, it wasn't 64 because the cars were 65s. He said it was 65. One was a station wagon and one was a car that 2 of the aliens got in the one car and 3 of them got in the other car and they drove off. And the film is about 20 minutes long, which can remember I told you the story that this guy had phoned up Ford and Bush, and the way it was described, he was going after Carter because there's a document that's in the National Security Archives at Georgetown University where the reporter who claims to have interviewed one of Jimmy Carter's Secret Service guys, and that he had been in the briefing when Carter got the briefing, and they had shown a 15-minute color film of a landing. So this would be the film. And I asked Clifford Stone, how long was the film? He said it was 400 feet of film. He said it was about 20 minutes. So he's basically hitting all the marks. And I hit Clifford Stone right off. I mean, I just phoned him up and I said, I would like to talk to you. And he said, sure. He's very, very nice guy. And I basically started right away with the Holloman Air Force Base film. And it was a story that he had told a number of years ago, the same story I heard from Paula Harris. So it all sort of confirmed that this was right. And so when this is how they're doing the thing. So with Bob Emenegger, they release the Holloman Air Force Base film, then they pull it back and they give him 8 seconds. Same as what they do with To the Stars. They only put a couple of seconds of the film and it makes it controversial. Is it real? Is it part of the film? Maybe it's a hoax, all this kind of stuff. And with Bob Emenegger, they said that Bob said that he actually mentioned the guy's name. His name escapes me, but there was a CIA agent on the set the entire time that they filmed UFO Past, Present, and Future. And this guy, Betsky was the guy. Betsky was the last name. I can't remember what his first name was. Betsky was the CIA guy. And the same thing happened, if you know the UFO history, when the Bill Moore thing happened, at the end of his thing, in the last couple of days before Reagan left office, they ran a documentary called UFO Cover-Up Live. And everybody that's seen it said, this is terrible. It was like horrible. It was scripted. It was this, it was that, and all this sort of stuff. And it was a disclosure thing. They were reading off of cue cards. And they were not allowed to tell their own story. So you had Bob Emenegger and Alan Sandler, who had done the 75 documentary, on there talking about the Holloman Air Force Base film. Coleman was on there. They had the Russians. It was live fed to the Russians. This is when the whole idea about the live alien came up, the Condor, the Falcon, the strawberry ice cream. That all came in that documentary. And so they put this goofy stuff in the documentary, and everybody goes, this thing's a hoax. It's just a bunch of garbage. And they're leaking real material. The EB thing was real. All that, a lot of the stuff was real in there. And on that one, I had heard that the Falcon, who was the sort of the Avery, if you're familiar with the Avery, this group of insiders, Tom DeLonge has his insiders. Bill Moore had 24 insiders, and he had given them all bird names. So Lee Graham was the pigeon, the Falcon was the head guy, and it was supposed to have been maybe one of the CIA directors. But the Falcon, I heard from Billy Cox, the reporter in Florida, that he'd interviewed Bill Coleman, who had been on the set when they were filming this thing. And he said, Bill Coleman said, I was there and I met this Falcon guy and I cannot believe this guy was involved. I cannot believe that this guy's involved in UFOs. And so Cox said, well, who is it? He said, I'm not going to tell you. I can't tell you. But he said, I cannot believe this guy was involved. So I phoned up Bill Moore. And I said, Bill, I heard the Falcon was on the set because I knew with the same thing happened with Bob Emenegger, that the CIA guy was on the set the entire time they were doing it. So he's basically, directing traffic, put this in, pull that out, making sure everybody does everything according to the script. And they all had to read off cue cards. In fact, Bob told the story that he's a comedian guy. He just loves to tell jokes. So he was reading his story about the Holman Air Force Base, and he said, and a UFO landed. He's reading off this cue card. This UFO landed, and the door opened, and out came Sasquatch. And he said, you could hear this guy in the background going, read what's on the card, read what's on the card. Because he just was so furious that he'd read off this cue card. So what happened there, I phoned Bill, and I said, Bill, I heard the Falcon was in the audience. Is that true? And he said, well, I'll tell you what, Grant. There was only 12 people on the set while that thing was being filmed. I'll just leave it at that, which basically confirmed, the Falcon was actually there. So they're orchestrating these things. The CIA is in there, and the CIA is running the program. Clifford offered this today, but I seem to think the same thing. Even though they're a foreign intelligence operation, for some reason, Defense Intelligence collects the material, Navy Intelligence, Air Force Intelligence, and DIA analyzes the material. So the Skinwalker Ranch, they're doing the analysis. They're looking at different films and stuff, and they're doing the analysis. But it's the CIA, I believe, that runs the program on the release, on what do we release, how do we release this kind of material, what do we release, even though they have nothing to do with UFOs. They got dragged into the Robertson panel thing, but you would think this is a foreign intelligence agency. They shouldn't have anything to do with UFOs at all. And I know that in the past, one of the people that's leaked material to, and there's lots of people that are being leaked material to. One of them is this famous Dan Smith. I don't know if you ever had him on your show, but Dan Smith has been known Ron Pandolfi since 1991, and Ron at that point said, we've got a phenomenology problem. He was the best man to Ron's second wedding. He's the godfather to his child, so he's fairly close to him. And he said that Ron, from time to time, he said, we'll tell him something only once. This is how they do the leak. He'll tell me one time, and either my radar is picking it up or it's not. And he will never repeat it. He will never answer any questions. And so Ron is leaking this material to him, and it's the same sort of thing. It's plausible deniability. He said, everything that Ron has said to me since 1991, he will deny he ever said it to me. And that's the whole deal. There's nothing on the record. There's nothing verified. But what happened in the very beginning, because the CIA is not supposed to be involved in intelligence inside the United States, they're not supposed to be talking to anybody inside the United States. That's the FBI. So when Ron started first telling him, I'm going to Los Alamos to see the live alien, we got a phenomenology problem, and started leaking this material to him indirectly, he reported his friend to the FBI. And he said there was a $100,000 investigation. It was done by the Inspector General, and that when it came back, they said, this is part of Ron's job. This is totally legitimate, whatever he's doing. So whatever they're doing, this has been approved by the government. There was a second incident occurred when the head of the Intelligence Committee, Dan Smith, gets involved. Ron gets invited to the head of the Intelligence Committee, and he asks him what's going on. And the head of the Intelligence Committee said, I can just tell you that you are dealing with very qualified, intelligent people, which indicates that the Intelligence Committee knows what's going on. The same as if you go back to the whole story that happened with Area 51. When Area 51 broke, everybody, of course, wondered, what the heck's going on? Bob Lazar comes out, and there's this sort of disagreement about his background. He's supposed to have these 2 master's degrees. He doesn't appear to have the master's degree. Everybody yells hoax. Everybody runs for the hills. And that's the way the story's supposed to end. Everybody's going to realize there's something's going on at Area 51. We're doing UFOs. Because before then, nobody even knew the word Area 51. And the story gets killed because everybody thinks Bob Lazar is hoaxing the thing.
Right.
So what happens there is that they give the material to Lazar. It falls through, but you have the material still coming out. So they've done this over and over again, time and time again. And every time you try to verify it through a government official, you'll get no records. We really don't know what's going on. And what happened in the Area 51 thing is the Senate Appropriations Committee, which hands out the money in the Senate, the head guys for the money. Senator Byrd was the head of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and he was into UFOs. And so when the Bob Lazar story broke, the Area 51 story broke, from what I was told, Byrd looked at the guys on the Senate Appropriations Committee and said, "Are we doing UFOs at Area 51? Yeah, we got flying saucers there? Because if we do, we're the guys paying the bills, and we don't know what's going on." So what they did is they hired a guy by the name of Dick D'Amato, and Jesse Marcel Jr. tells this. If you go back to the citizens' hearing, Jesse Marcel Jr. tells the story of interacting with Dick D'Amato, and Dick D'Amato putting the book Majestic on a table in a secure room in the sub-basement of the Capitol and tapping the book and said, "Jesse, I just want to let you know, this ain't fiction. This is for real." And he was sent to Area 51. Senate Appropriations Committee sent this guy with every security clearance you could. He could waive anybody's security clearance. And he goes to Area 51 to find out what's going on, because Byrd wants to know, are we paying for UFOs? And he goes there, and he comes back and he tells Jesse and other people, he said, "I had every security clearance in the country, and I could not get to this." He actually talks to a guy on the site, a guy who knows, and he's ratted out by George Knapp. And he goes to this guy, and he said, "I understand you know what's going on. You were talking to George about this, whatever." And the guy said, "I'm not saying nothing." And he said, "Well, I can waive any security clearance, anything you swore to, I can waive." And the guy says, "I'm not saying nothing. If my boss says I can talk, I'll talk." So he goes to the guy's boss. This is 1991, somewhere in there. Goes to the guy's boss, and the guy says, "I don't care. I wasn't involved. The guy wants to talk, let him talk. I don't care." So he goes back and he says, "Well, your boss says you can talk." He says, "I'm not saying nothing." And then he cuts off with George. He says, and George has told the story publicly, except for the guy's name. He's told the story publicly. He said the guy comes and he says, "I can't talk anymore." And George says to him, "Well, you can't let this thing go. You got to do something. You got to put this on the record." So the guy makes a videotape. And his one son is a senator, was a former state senator in Nevada, and his other son was an FBI agent. So the FBI agent kid comes, George and him and the father sit down, and he says, "We got the film." The father made the film, and the guy has now died. Now I don't know what's going to happen with the film, but George confirms that, and he won't mention who the guy is, but he says, "You know that book Area 51 by Annie Jacobson?" And they talk about the Roadrunners and all this sort of stuff. And at the end, they have this bizarre story that she has this source, this engineer guy, who tells the story about the Russians. And the Russians and the Germans have this genetically modified kid. And they send this UFO over. And that's the Roswell crash. And it was to scare the Americans. You know that story, that weird story that killed that Area 51 book that everybody was so upset about? Same guy. I can't tell who it is. It's the same guy. And when I talked to him, he wasn't talking about Russians and Germans. So this is the thing. They've been leaking all this stuff. They're leaking it through George. They're leaking it through all different people. And everybody has their thing where you either play the game and you sort of play the game the way they want you to play the game, or you don't get anything. Now, maybe the reason I've never been contacted by one of these guys is because I'm a Canadian. I'm not an American. So that may be one of the reasons. But some people claim, like Greer is claiming 1,000 witnesses. Project Camelot, I don't know how many she has, 100, 150 witnesses. Tom DeLonge has maybe a couple dozen now. Bill Moore had a couple dozen. And all it is we've got these people inside the government who are telling us state secrets. And I maintain, no, that's not what's going on. They're telling you stuff, but it's altered stuff. They're getting stories out, but it's very, very controlled.
For most people out there, Grant, they will look at this entire subject and they will say, how does this affect me? Why should I care about this? Everything the government does is against what I stand for anyways. I've never had a politician listen to me, so why should UFOs or anything like this be any different? Why is this important to the everyday public?
I maintain in my latest speeches, it has nothing. It doesn't mean anything. Because what a lot of people will say is, I want disclosure. And then you say, well, you got disclosure in December. Disclosure means to reveal. That's all it means, is to reveal. They revealed in December. And what they did, it's a carefully programmed thing. So in 2013, Bob Bigelow, who's one of the key players in this thing, he has the money, He's the guy that had the $22 million. He's the guy that redid his facility to handle classified material. He had to, alter some buildings and stuff like that. So Bob Bigelow says in 2013 in an interview with George Knapp. So you go back and listen to these interviews and suddenly you realize what's been going on. He said, George says, are you in favor of disclosure? And Bob Bigelow says, no, I'm not. What we need is confirmation. What we need is the government to come out and say, this thing's for real. We're not saying it's ET. This thing's for real. And stop right there. That's exactly what they did in December. So they do this confirmation thing. They confirm the government is working on UFOs. And then Knapp or Bigelow says, in a couple years down the road, then you can start to bring out the idea of aliens and what's behind this thing. But first you need confirmation. So what happens is they do the confirmation and people say, well, no, I want, and what people basically want is they want the government to stand up and tell them what they think's going on, whether they think it's demons, if they think it's reptilians, if they want the government to tell their version of the story. And what I say is it really doesn't matter. And I really start to push this thing because I had a download and it'll be too long to get into it, but part of the download said, we have a number of things in the world that it's either this or this, and you've made the wrong decision. So I'll give you an example. Is the world made out of little nuts and bolts, or is the world made out of consciousness? What is primary? Does consciousness create the brain, or does the brain create consciousness? If you believe it's one thing, then it's one world. And you have a whole world that you can build out of that. If it turns out to be the other thing, it's a whole different world. Everything is completely different. And in terms of this, if you have the whole idea of, is it one life or is it multiple lives? If it's one life, if we only live one time, then it's one world. But if it's reincarnation, and I say there's as much evidence for reincarnation as there is for UFOs, and that's a disclosure we should make. That changes everything because then you start looking at soul contract. Then you start looking at coming in here. So I say in the end, when it comes to disclosure, I say it really doesn't matter what the government does because when you die, you're only going to get asked one question. How did it work out? Because you made an agreement to come into this world to do something. And when you go out, they're going to ask you, how did it work out? Because you planned it. You set up all the players. You set up all the pieces. You were going to intend to do this. And you're not going to be able to say, if I had got disclosure, I would have done something. If Hillary Clinton hadn't destroyed her emails, I would have done something. If my mother-in-law hadn't pissed me off, I would have done something. If the dog hadn't eaten my homework, I would have done something. They're going to call timeout. It's got nothing to do. Nothing outside of me really matters. The only thing that really matters in this world, if it's reincarnation, if it's one world, then it's a different thing, or one life. If it's reincarnation, then there's only one thing that matters. You and I, Dave, came into this world. We made an agreement to do something. All we have to do is figure out, why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? And are we doing it? The rest doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Hillary does. It doesn't matter what Trump does. It doesn't matter what disclosure does. These are just cards that are being dealt to you. If it's multiple lives, it's all experience. There's no good and bad. There's just experience. You're being dealt a card. You get to live in Vancouver. You get to have a UFO sighting. You get to be an immigrant. You get to be on the other side of the wall and wander around the world with no place to go. And these are cards, and it's how you play the cards. It's not the cards that are being dealt. So no, disclosure doesn't mean anything. Everybody's waiting and they think, oh, if we get disclosure, the poor people are going to get fed and the world's going to be a wonderful place. Absolute garbage. It has to do with you doing your things. And even if we destroy the world, there's this whole thing, we're getting these images about environmental devastation. They're warning us about this, about nuclear weapons, whatever. It really, in the end, doesn't matter whether we destroy the world. Because you're just going to go someplace else and learn your lessons. But you will learn your lessons. There are a lot of places. There are a lot of chances or whatever. And that was the whole thing that got me into this whole music thing, was the whole Neil Young thing. The song that was given to me was after the gold rush. The whole idea, this is the Barkerville thing, the Barkerville gold thing, is when the gold is gone, it's going to become a ghost town. And the silver seeds, the flying saucers, are going to come and take the chosen ones, which Yvonne Smith calls the experiencers, to a new home in the sun. And this is this whole concept that it really doesn't matter if we destroy the world. It eventually, whether you're on this planet or you come back as one of the evil aliens or wherever you go on your next life, you have lessons to learn, and all we're doing is learning lessons. So it really has nothing. We're externally motivated. We think that we're sad because our mother, or we're sad because the government. We got the wrong government. This is why I'm having a bad time in the world. It's a matter of personal decision how you play the cards you're dealt.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, Grant, in regards to Bob Bigelow, he has been so adamant about this entire topic, public about it. I mean, he's not granting 60 Minutes interviews every week or anything, or having press conference updates. So in a way, he's very quiet. But billionaires in general have a lot of pull.
Yep.
They have a lot of pull on the environment, in sports, in politics, in everything that we do or everything we touch or own. It comes down to billionaires. Yet this billionaire seems to be going public, and if it was any other billionaire out there on any other subject, the world would go crazy. And yet when it comes to UFOs, and we have a multi-billionaire, talking about aliens and that they're already here, and on 60 Minutes saying, when asked if people thinks he's crazy, he says, I don't give a damn. I know what the truth is. And yet everybody just sloughs it off. How, when somebody goes that public, especially with that type of background and financial backing, does he continue to get swept under the rug?
Well, there's two things on that. Number one, Bob Bigelow comes out, he makes a statement, and then he goes back in hiding. Until a couple of years ago, there was not even a picture of Bob Bigelow. Bob Bigelow wants to be Mr. Nobody knows who he is, so he can walk around without being swarmed in a mall and stuff like that, and allow his kids to have ordinary lives. So that's the one factor. And the other factor is you have a president of the United States who pays $130,000 to a Playboy model, and it's like a story for about 2 days. That's the way the world is. It's 24/7 news. And unless it's a really, really, really big story, people just go on to the next story. It's on the number one, it may be on the front page. And it just moves away, especially if Bob Bigelow isn't doing any other interviews. So if he were to go on another thing and do another interview and push it again, he only did the one thing. The interesting thing about the 60 Minutes interview, a lot of people may not know. And again, you go back to how do they do this thing? And I'm not saying this is exactly what happened. The girl who did the 60-minute interview of Bob Bigelow, if you look up who her husband was, her husband is an intelligence guy. He has an intelligence company, and he was actually brought up in front of Congress, or they tried to charge him or whatever, because in 2005 he was putting pro-American. His job was to put pro-American stories in Iraqi newspapers. And so here you have this intelligence guy. So then you start looking at that and you go like, maybe the 60-minute interview was planned. Maybe Bigelow did it because they were setting up. Because you got to remember, they were setting up this whole program of dropping this whole story. It was supposed to happen when Hillary was elected. And because Hillary lost, they had to delay. They suddenly lost their main player in the game, and they had to revamp the whole plan or what they were going to do. So this thing was in the works for a long time, because I wrote Managing Magic, and I talk about Tom DeLonge for about 75 pages in that book. I talk a lot about Tom DeLonge. That was long before Tom DeLonge had his news conference. That was long before the New York Times. I knew what Tom DeLonge was going on, what he was doing and stuff like that. And this is a time when Tom DeLonge didn't believe anything. So the 60-minute story, I think, would be the story that was carefully controlled. And in terms of media, again, today, these days, most stories will go under the rug in a couple of days. Even the biggest stories, with this White House is the prime example. I mean, a lot of times it doesn't stay on for more than a couple of hours, and you're on to the next sort of. The news media wants right here, right now, breaking news, this sort of thing. And you got to remember with reporters is that if you're a reporter, and you've been a reporter, so you know how this works. So you're doing a story, whether it's sports or whatever. They say, okay, go do the Vancouver Canucks. They had this controversy or whatever. You go do the story. And then tomorrow, okay, now you're going to go do the BC Lions. We've got another story here. And you go wherever they tell you. You have not got any time to research anything. You're doing story to story to story to story. So nobody in media really has the time to, like you and I, sit there for years and try to put all the pieces together or whatever. And when you try to go to a media people, and I don't know how many you've dealt with, I've dealt with a few. It's not that they don't want to do the story. It's they just don't have the background or they don't have the support from their editorial board. Billy Cox did this for years. He had this very dramatic sighting when he was very, very young, like just unbelievable sighting on a beach where he has this thing, and he becomes this reporter for USA Today, for the Florida division of USA Today. And then he has the Herald, the Tampa Bay Herald he's writing for. And he said to me, my editors simply tolerate what I do. So you can do it as long as it doesn't disturb your regular job. Or if you take Angela Joyner, who I knew fairly well, who broke the Stevensville, Texas story. She told the story, and that was kind of funny because I was with her. She was going to help me write a book just after I retired. I went down there. And she broke the story, and it was the biggest story they'd ever done. They had just piles of newspapers. So she was famous. She was on Larry King Live. She was on, the Russians, all sorts of news media from around the world was there interviewing her. And there's this little Stevensville, Texas newspaper, and she was like famous. So they let her do the story one day. They sold these newspapers. The second day, follow up, third day, whatever. And then they said to her, okay, Angela, it's time to go back to work. We can't keep doing, because she was supposed to do the front page news story. She was supposed to do the court report. And there was one other thing she was supposed to do in the newspaper. And they said, we can't keep doing your work, Angela. Cut it out. And she said, but there's still sightings. There's people still phoning me. And they said to her, ignore them. So she told the people, I can't take your UFO phone calls during the day. Phone me at home at night. So then they were phoning her at home. And then she got a phone call from the Dallas Morning News. And she was talking to them, and somebody overheard her talking to Dallas Morning News, and they figured that she was trying to use the UFO thing to get a job with the Dallas Morning News, and they brought her into the office, and her computer and her Rolodex were in a box. And they said, Angela, this is not working out well, all this sort of stuff. And she said, well, they really didn't fire me. It just didn't work out. It wasn't really working. I said, Angela, in Canada, when they bring you into the office and put your computer in a box and your Rolodex, that means you're fired. And she never got another real job. She was doing a job where she was doing stories that would take her 2 days to do. She would have to track down all the people and vet all this stuff and that sort of stuff. And she'd make $50 for an article. She was devastated. Her life basically ended. And it really wasn't that the media had anything against UFOs. It was just like, this is a business. We're making money. We haven't got time to do this UFO stuff, and reporters are on this 24/7 news cycle. So you're going from story to story to story, unless you're like the New York Times or the Washington Post, where you can see a big story and you have the money where you can stick 10 reporters on it and stick with it for 6 months. But it's just not been a big news story, and I'm not really sure then why the New York Times dropped it, because New York Times was one of the biggest stories they ever did, that December 16th news story. And Leslie Kane was on the radio, and she said, they were asking her about the next story. She said, let me guarantee you, we're not going to drop the ball, which sort of indicated they were going to do another story. But they've never done another story. The Washington Post hasn't. They've done sort of small little stories, and Politico has done nothing. And so I'm not really sure why they didn't jump on it, whether they were told to back off or whatever. Because if you have the biggest story, you'd figure that you'd go. I know they went after Bigelow to try to find out about the metal story, because the thing they didn't have it nailed down in the first story was the idea that Bigelow had redesigned some of the buildings to handle this metal. And everybody thought, well, he's got a flying saucer and stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was just the fact that Bigelow hadn't handled top secret material, that you need a SCIF, you need a facility where you can't just keep, top secret documents or secret documents in a warehouse. You need a special facility that has all sorts of, government regulations as to how you handle documents and vaults and all this kind of stuff.
So when the major players are pulling this, and like we said, Bigelow's pulling the strings, and he's able to call his own shots because he has that power and ability, and is he the one who we don't hear of at the top of the To the Stars Academy, because it's never really been disclosed what his role, or even John Podesta's role, is with TTSA.
Yeah, that goes to who's actually running it. Podesta, I'm sure, is only like a partial player. That's why I said there was that 2-month delay before he got back to Tom DeLonge. So he goes to Obama. He goes to, and he did state that he had discussed with UFOs with Obama, and he'd made that famous tweet. The biggest disappointment of 2014 was once again, which means he talked to Clinton about it and couldn't convince Clinton to go public. Once again, my biggest disappointment was not getting UFO disclosure. And so he gets permission. And so he gets his walking papers as to what he can do. Okay, you're going to play this role. But I think it's on all these programs, it's a need to know. So the question is, who's the guy who's at the top of the pyramid? Now, my impression is it's Jim Semivan. Jim Semivan is the guy that I was told that got the 3 newspapers all to go the same day. He's still operational CIA, he's still on contract, even though he's retired. It's almost like Chase Brandon said, at the CIA, it's like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can't leave. They all just keep working for the CIA. They're doing contract work for the CIA. So I think it's Jim Semivan who's running the actual operation. But again, I go back, and a lot of people disagree. I think it still goes back to the president. It goes back, and Brennan, the guy who lost his security clearance from Trump, gave a lecture where he's talking about the briefing. And what I think this program is, he talks about briefing President Obama. And he says, you can actually find this. If you do briefing Brennan, Obama, you can probably pop up this video. It's a really interesting video where he talks what it's like to brief a president. So when a president gets elected, say November the 5th, whenever the election is, and he gets inaugurated January, you have this 3-month period where most people have no idea what's going on. I mean, they've never done national security. They've never, run a big economy or whatever. So they have to bring them up to speed. So they have these briefings. And one of the briefings they do is the big intelligence briefing, where they give them the sort of the dirty black ops stuff that they're running. And Obama had made a comment that it's a good thing that when I got the security briefing, I was in a room that had steel bars on the window, because I probably would have jumped out. Now, Brennan talks about the security briefing that he gave to Obama, and he calls what's called the wake-up call. So the CIA director comes in and he says, okay, Dave, you've won the election. We just want to let you know, Dave, this is how it works. We're doing this. We're knocked off this president. We're doing this. We're overthrowing this country. We're doing this. We're doing this. We run this country. We're doing this. We're doing this. And the president's going, holy cow, you can't believe what's going on. Like you can't believe the black ops that are going on. There are billions of dollars being spent. And then he says, and this is the wake-up call. He says to the president, okay, Mr. President, I just want to let you know, these are done on behalf of the President of the United States. The office of the President of the United States. They're not done on behalf of any one president, which means they go from president to president to president to president. They keep running these programs all the way through. And he said, when you put your hand on the Bible on January the 20th or 21st, whatever it is, just remember, Mr. President, in the afternoon, unless you tell us to stop, we're still going to be doing this and this and this and this. And suddenly the president realizes, like, now it's my cover-up. Now it's my dirty tricks. Now it's all my kind of stuff. And they put him in the box. They say, you can stop this stuff if you want. But I believe UFOs is one of those programs. Because as I said, they did it with Emenegger in the 70s. They did it with Bill Moore in the 1980s. They did it with these new MJ-12 documents in the 1990s. They're doing it with Tom DeLonge now. This is a program where, I think from the Brookings Institute report from the 1960s, where they said, if you realize there are extraterrestrials, you need to acclimatize the people, because in a lot of these situations, the civilization that's at the bottom will disappear if you don't. So you're acclimatizing people, and it works under this fear thing. So every president is kicking the can down the road. Nobody wants to stand up and be the disclosure guy. They just say, okay, drill another oil well. Let's leak some more stuff. Just leak some more stuff. Because the longer they leak it, and you can see there, and now that's why I say I don't really see evil government officials, because people have this idea, it's the evil government. So I say, okay, so you get Roosevelt, it's evil government, and then Truman is evil government, and then you have the Republicans come in, and what? Now it's the evil government again, and then the Kennedy comes back and now it's Democrat. And now they suddenly become evil. And we always have this idea they're evil. No, they're just guys doing their job based upon their belief. Now, they may have some pretty strange beliefs as to how the world should work and who should have the money and that sort of stuff. So you're going to have that kind of stuff. But basically, you have people who are trying to uphold the law and or obey the law and uphold the Constitution. And they have this very difficult thing. And basically, they're just kicking it down the road. So they go to this whole thing. So if I'm giving you the briefing, I wrote an article. It's in Managing Magic called The 64 Reasons They've Decided Not to Tell You the Truth. And if you start to realize some of the stuff that's going on, so I come to you and I say, Dave, you know, this could happen. The stock market could melt down. We could have this, that, whatever. And you go, holy cow, I don't know. And they say, if you leave it for 5 more years, Dave, we're going to know better how to deal with these aliens if they happen to be evil. We're going to have better technology. If we give it out now, the Russians may have the pieces that we're missing and they'll have it. So the longer we delay, the better off we're going to be in terms of knowing what to do in terms of the aliens and better get farther ahead. Because in war, it comes down to what's called lead time. And I've known this for many, many years. It's lead time. So if you got an atomic bomb in World War II and you drop the bomb, they go to the emperor of Japan and they say, oh my God, they dropped an atomic bomb on us. And then the emperor says, okay, let's build an atomic bomb and drop it on them. And then it's how long is it going to take? And the guy goes, oh, I don't know, 7, 8, 10 years. You haven't got time. It's lead time. If you've got a weapon and you use it, the war is over. So that's the whole thing, is the farther you get ahead of your opponents in terms of your technology, the safer you are if you have to use that weapon. So there's so many reasons that I think that would allow them to procrastinate and just push the thing down the road. And every president, I think, will go along with this gradual disclosure. Yeah, okay, tell them a little bit more. But we still need to control the classified material, how they get here, how the metal, how they fly the ship, all that kind of stuff. Because we could build some weapons and we can rule the world. Whoever gets this technology will rule the world. So we're not going to give that up, but we'll tell the people there's aliens here. We'll tell them this kind of stuff, as long as it's not the classified material as to how the craft actually operates.
We only got about 5 minutes before we got to go to break here. And one of the topics I want to get to, Grant, and we can kind of warm everything up with this, is looking at the To the Stars Academy, and they have this new project called the Atom Research Project. What have you learned about that, and how does that affect people and their reports?
Well, I think they are, that's where I see them as just guys who are trying to do the best they can, whatever the background or where they're coming from or whatever. And so I've been involved because the Canadians were involved. I don't know if you knew. The Canadians were very involved in material. I've actually got some audios. If I'd known, I would have given you the audios. You could have played them. I'll maybe give them to you. You can maybe play them on a future show. And the Canadians actually were, a lot of the material that was being recovered in the United States was being sent to Canada between 1950 and 1954. Wilbur Brockhouse Smith was analyzing the stuff. I talked to the metallurgist. I said, how much material did you handle? He said tons of it. And they were handling this kind of material. So I've had a sort of a background in this material, but what I say, and this is what I'm going to talk about at the conference in a couple of weeks. I've come up with a theory, and they always use, everybody always use acronyms. So they got the ATOM program, the ADAM program, and mine's the TTOW, the TOW program, and it's the theory of wow. And I've come to this theory that what I think the intelligence may be doing is nothing more than making us say, wow, they're really not doing anything. And I'm going to go through this thing. I'm going to go through the different grades. And one of the grades is metals. If you take a look at the metals, like Jacques Vallée has a whole list. I've handled a couple pieces of metal that different people have. I've got a piece of metal in my drawer over here that came from a crash site. I don't know if it's extraterrestrial or whatever, but the claim is it is. There's no two pieces that are the same. And that's what I'm going to talk about at the conference. And when you start looking at that, I say, maybe this is just to make us say, wow, because you would assume that all the metal is going to be the same. You're going to have all the same materials. It's all different. And there's like probably 25 different pieces that I'm familiar with. And I've handled some of this stuff. And maybe it's just a grade 6 project on Alpha Centauri or on Zeta Reticuli where they say, we got these natives on the Earth there, and we want to get their attention. We want to make them think. We want to make them realize they're not alone. So we need this program, because what you see, in the Brazilian thing from the 1950s. You have this flying saucer comes flying in, and these fishermen are going, "Oh my God, this thing's coming! It's just going to crash in the water." And all of a sudden, this thing makes this sharp turn, the Ubatuba thing, and it makes this sharp turn, flies up in the sky, and explodes into a million pieces. And all these pieces rain down, and these guys get these pieces of flying saucers. You have these things from 1947. Off the coast of Washington. Same thing. The UFO looks like it's going to crash, and then all of a sudden it shoots out this metal and flies away. And this has happened. It's called extruded metals. It's happened numerous times where the UFO looks like it's going to crash, and then it shoots out this metal, and the people pick up the metal. And before, we couldn't analyze it. They just say, oh, it's slag, it's just ordinary metal or whatever. Now we have the material. And this is where Jacques Vallée and Lou Elizondo is the other guy that's behind this program. They're the guys that are recovering the metal. So I go back to these pieces that I knew about, and then it says, oh, Lou Elizondo contacted me. I said, he did? And then the other one was like, oh, Jacques Vallée wanted this piece. They're picking up all these pieces. They're going through the history of ufology, and they're gathering all these pieces. The key thing is that no two pieces are the same. So my contention is that maybe it's just a Great Six project, and they, like the one that Jacques Vallée talks about, where they alter the isotopes. So they say, well, what are we going to do? And the one kid says the Science Fair project says, let's screw around with the isotopes. Let's throw it down. And all it means is like UFO sightings, like the videos, like appearing to the Nimitz for a week, saying, here we are, we're over here, and flying one under the water and making bubbles and stuff like that. All they're doing is trying to get people's attention to realize we are not alone. And the metal will teach you nothing other than the fact that we are not alone. This was not made on Earth. But it's not going to teach you anything. It's not going to tell you where they came from, why they're here. It's just to get us to say, oh, we're not alone. Something's going on, that we didn't build this kind of stuff, whether it's sightings, whether it's videos, whether it's metal. The only thing that will tell you what's going on, and that's the important part of my research, is you got to start talking to the people who are interacting with the intelligence, because they are getting messages, they are getting information. Then you can understand what's going on. The metals will only tell us something's going on, and we didn't build this stuff. But it's not going to give you much more answer than that. It's almost like the videos. You look at the Nimitz video and stuff. You go, yeah, that's pretty weird. It's probably not our stuff. But that's all it tells you.
Grant, I'm going to get you to hold on here. We got about another half an hour left with Grant Cameron tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He will be appearing in just a couple weeks' time at the first annual Caribou Paracon as our keynote speaker, talking everything disclosure. We'll be back with more Grant Cameron right after this.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from U4 Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
From the mile-high state of Colorado, sharing our signal around the world, I invite you to Spaced Out Sundays. Hi, I'm Tessa Nicole Thomas, and I'm closing out the week by taking you on a paranormal journey to the world of the weird. Ghosts, aliens, psychic phenomena, I will hit it all in your questions too. So let us highlight the paranormal for you. So come join me for Spaced Out Sundays starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, 12 a.m. Eastern, only at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being with us. Tomorrow night on the show, Chris Cogswell, Chris George Zuger, Reality Paranormal. Well, we look into the scientific side of everything. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. Hello to everyone listening in on the SOR Radio Network and Deep Talk Radio. Don't forget, all of our archives are free. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Where is it here? Oh my goodness. This one has me stumbled. Macrolepidoptera. I don't even know what the hell that is. Macrolepidoptera. Nobody knows really what the meaning is. Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to Bumblefoot, shop at our store, read up on the encounter online, and so much more, and new stuff coming very, very soon. Don't forget, you got a couple of weeks to get your tickets for the first annual Caribou Paracon presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. Go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now, because our keynote speaker that weekend is the man we have on tonight, Grant Cameron, one of the best researchers when it comes to the whole disclosure movement. His books can be found all over Amazon. Highly suggest you check them out. Get them for yourself, for your collection. Grant, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. And really enjoying it. You forgot one item. It was coming up Thursday as hockey season starts.
Yes, I know. I know. You and I will be talking a lot of hockey at the Caribou Paracon. That is for sure.
Sounds like you got some real hot. You beat us 8-2 the other night with your hot shot young kids. Like, holy cow! I guess you guys got something going.
We're coming. Our Canucks are coming. We actually have something to believe in this year. I don't think we're playoff bound, but we got something to believe in. That is for sure. Grant, right before the break, we were talking about the To the Stars Atom Project, and basically what this is a project where people feel they have found any sort of alien metamaterials or materials in general to turn them on over to the Stars Academy, and they're going to report on them and do all sorts of scientific studies. Would you give anything to the Stars or any other UFO group out there?
Well, what they're doing, what they claim they're going to do, and they don't really need, like Jacques Vallée said, they only need as much as a head of a pin. That's all they really need. And he even makes sort of a snide remark about everybody seems to be happy to turn them over, except for UFO groups. They're going to keep them as relics or something. So it's a matter of, I would say that I would give them a piece of what I got, because they don't need that much. And what they do is they take this huge insurance policy out, so that if the material doesn't come back, you don't get it. I don't really object to that, because I can see you don't want to give the whole thing away. But a lot of people want to know whether their piece is really legitimate. I'm not really sure how much material is going to be given out, whether the full reports will be given out. And again, as I pointed out before the break, it's not going to prove anything. Like the big piece that they have is the one that Linda Howe has maintained since 1996, the arts parts piece. This is the one with the bismuth, magnesium, layered stuff, 1 to 100, this very thin bismuth, then the magnesium, and it's 37 layers thick or whatever. There's according to everybody she's talked to, there's no way we have that. And the way Linda has always controlled the piece is that everybody she's given it to, she's given time limits. And she did the same thing with Tom DeLonge. They had a time limit. They could only keep it for so long. And she said since 1996, she's been able to maintain control of these pieces that she got. There was a flat, sort of a gray piece, and then this layered piece. But again, what they're going to learn out of this is just the fact that, this layered piece, we didn't create this thing. This is coming from somewhere else. End of story. It doesn't tell you how they seem to indicate that they're going to be able to tell you how the craft flies. I don't know how much you followed it, but there was this whole deal with the terahertz from the report that came out of Great Britain about the Roswell crash, where they realized that this terahertz energy was part of the thing. And Hal Puthoff has indicated to Linda a number of years ago that if you bombard this layered piece with high-end terahertz, that his mathematical calculations are this thing will float, that it will become anti-gravitic. And yet Linda have a bit of a difference. She believes that the black world has all this technology. I used to believe that. I don't believe it anymore. And she has now confirmed that Hal said to her that they can't find anybody who has a terahertz generator that can produce the intensity of terahertz that's required by the mathematical formula to make this piece sort of have an anti-gravity affair. So people will think that the government has all this stuff, and I say, if you start looking and keep an open mind about the thing, no, I don't think they have anything. And I'll give you some examples. Bob Bigelow. So Bob Bigelow has all these contacts, and he said quite clearly, he has these contracts inside of the government, inside of intelligence. What the heck is he still working on? Basically trailers, the expandable trailers that they're going to put on Mars. Like, why is he doing this? I mean, why would he not work on real technology? The same as Firmage. I had a question put to Joe Firmage. If you know, Joe Firmage is the guy that had the vision in the 1990s where this being comes into his room, and he's this .com guy, has $2.5 billion, has this $2.5 billion computer company, and has this vision, and tells this being that he wants to go to space, and the guy's very sort of upset with him, and like, why should we help you? And he said, because I'm willing to die for it. And apparently he gets downloaded with some material, some information on how to move around inside an atom, and he starts to work on this gravity control stuff. And there's a story that he's on level 9. He's working on the 10th design, and they're going to make this sort of announcement that they're able to create this gravitic effect. But it's a very small gravitic effect in terms of, making this thing levitate off the ground a couple of inches. So then they spent $100 million on this thing. Firmage again said he's got all these contacts inside the government. He's got all these intelligence contacts. What the heck is he working on, this little gravity effect that'll raise something off the ground by a couple of inches? It appears that they don't really have anything. And that all these people that have all this money, like the guy, this Musk guy. So he's going to Mars, and you hear all these stories. Oh, he's going to Mars. Why is he going to Mars so fast? I mean, we've got this technology. He's going with rockets. Rockets is 5,000-year-old Chinese technology that they had, with fireworks. This is very old technology. Now we got computers that can sort of control how the firework, what direction it goes. But when you start looking at all the documents and you start looking at all these people with the money, none of them seem to be working on anything that is anything more than very simple anti-gravitic stuff. So I really doubt they're going to get anything. What I've been told, and actually Eric Davis, I don't know if you're familiar, he goes on Coast to Coast. This is about, I guess, a couple of months ago, and he's talking about crashes. Someone asked him a question because he brings up crashes. So someone asked him a question, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you were to bet on Roswell, I think that'd be a pretty safe bet." So he's basically saying, yeah, Roswell happened. And then he talks about the Del Rio crash. And both these are in the MJ-12 document. And then he makes this explosive statement. He says, we did have a crash retrieval program. And we shut it down in 1989 because we didn't learn anything. Now, I've known Eric Davis for 20 years. And Eric Davis is a lot of things, but he ain't a liar. And I don't think and in fact, George Knapp said to him, "Oh, I know what tomorrow's headline is going to be." Like, he shouldn't have said it. He knew it. As soon as he said it, he shouldn't have said that. And that was when Bob Lazar left. And I remember back, there's a story that most people won't know, but I've been in this so long. I remember this this was called the core story. Have you ever heard the core story? It was come up with 3 top guys. So Hal Puthoff, who's the main guy, the main scientist in To the Stars. Kit Green, who's running the experiencer program in the To the Stars. They're working with experiencers with DNA, with the antenna, with these people's being able to tune in the UFOs, make contact with UFOs, aliens, and stuff like that. He's there. And the third one is Jacques Vallée. So these are 3 very, very prominent guys who have been in this since the early 1970s. In fact, Kit Green and Hal Puthoff may have the longest held top secret SCI clearances in the United States, because they were both involved in remote viewing back in 1971, 72. They've had these top secret security clearances. So they would know. So why are they working on this very, very simple technology? Why they don't seem to have anything? And in 1987, they had a famous meeting where they came up with this thing called the core story. And it was happened at a Denny's restaurant in 1987. And they said, what do we know for sure about the UFO phenomenon? Remember, these are very prominent guys who would know if there was a black program and what's going on. And they came to the conclusion that, yes, there was a crash. We are being visited. There was at least one crash, and that we didn't learn anything, that we are having a very hard time back engineering the stuff. It's almost like Jacques Vallée says, if you give a garage door opener to Leonardo da Vinci, what's he going to calculate from that? It's this whole idea. And from the technology I have, and I'll probably talk a little bit about this when I come to the conference, the importance of the consciousness thing. I have like 50 people now who will describe flying the craft. And I've tracked these people down, and it just fascinates me. I can't believe the UFO community is not going down this road. And they will tell you that you fly the craft with your mind. You become one with the craft. You put your hand on a pad, and you can take your hand off, and then wherever you think you want to go, you can go. And the one guy told me, this is just a couple weeks ago, I did the interview. He said, I want to be outside the Milky Way and see the Milky Way from a distance. And it took, he said, 2 seconds. And he was outside the Milky Way looking at the Milky Way. That kind of technology, I don't care what anybody says. Wayne got it. A lot of people, Chris Bledsoe, a lot of people will describe this technology where you come up to the craft and it's 10 feet across. The door opens, you go inside the craft, and it's 50 feet across. And you look out again, and it's 10 feet across. You look inside the craft, and it's 50 feet across. There's no way we have this technology. So I think a lot of it is military bluffing, bluster, trying to throw the Russians off. We've got all this technology. We're flying all this stuff. I look at these very high-level guys, and I know them fairly well. I've seen the documents. I don't see any indication whatsoever that any of these people is working on anything other than rockets, and why they're working on rockets. So why is Bigelow still working on rockets and stuff? Because that's where the money is. If you go with a UFO program, you're not going to get any funding. The money is in the rockets. And Bob Bigelow even talks about this. He uses Russian rockets to launch his space stuff. And so he was asked, why do you use Russian rockets? And he said, because the Americans drive over theirs with bulldozers. And well, why would they do that? Because the Americans say you are not going to put used rockets on the market to compete against new rockets. So they destroy all the Minuteman missiles. They had 20,000 of these things. They decommissioned all these things, and they drove over them. Instead of using them for the space program to launch satellites and stuff, they drove over them so you could keep the thing. And that's the military-industrial complex speech that Eisenhower gave in the 1960s. Everybody misinterprets it. The last speech he gave was the military-industrial complex speech, where he said, beware the military-industrial complex. I was at the Eisenhower Library, and I can guarantee you that's not what the speech was. The speech was, beware the military-industrial congressional complex. And the whole thing is, you get this loop that you get congressmen who, almost like we were talking about at the beginning, you get invested, you're an embedded journalist, they're working for you, you're working for them, you don't want to cut their throat, they don't cut your throat, and so you get embedded. So a congressman gets, the prime example is the Abrams tank, the A1 tank. So the congressman gets the A1 facility, he's got 10,000 jobs, they're building the A1 tank, and suddenly tanks are like useless. You can just knock them off with, like target practice. So we don't need any more tanks. So they said, there was actually an article written called Tanks But No Thanks. And they said, stop building the A1 tank. the Army doesn't want it anymore. They could not shut it down because there's a senator or a congressman who has 10,000 jobs at stake, and he said, you ain't shutting this factory down. And that's what Eisenhower was warning about. The military-industrial congressional complex, you get this loop. Everybody's making money, and that's why Bigelow's working on rockets. That's why Musk is working on rockets, because that's where the money is. Everybody's into making money, and that's why the UFO technology will never really take off, because there's no funding for it. The money is still in rockets, and it's about making money. It's really not advancing science. It's about making money.
So is there a real care for the UFO phenomena? Do we even care about ETs? Do we care about what's coming down the pipe in the future? Or is it about more of the immediate effects, about how we could take advantage of this on a financial end?
Well, for the main people, it's about making money. So if you could convince somebody in some high position that you could make some money at this thing, that's why they've used the threat thing. That's the only way they can figure to get money from this thing, is to paint the evil aliens as, the bad guys. This is a threat. And they used to use, before they used this one, they used the thing about, our airplanes. You remember this one? There could be a crash with one of our airplanes. This is a threat, because it's a danger to aircraft. These things are flying around. So you're always trying to find a way to get financing, how to do this. I don't think that's the road to go, because basically, like in America, it's all about three things: money, money, money. And people will always play the game, and you will do the wrong thing just to make money, because you're going to justify, I know it's wrong, but I'm the president of the company and I've got to look after the stockholders. And so they look the other way. That's why it's so important for you and I to get past the money aspect and to realize that there are experiencers out there who are getting messages, who are and the idea how the universe works, the idea that consciousness is primary, the idea that everything is connected, everything is one, all these sort of concepts, which are almost like spiritual concepts that people are being given, or even to understand the idea that life does not end. This whole idea that 26% of all experiencers are given messages about reincarnation. 75% of them believe there's a connection between reincarnation and this thing. A lot of people see dead people on the ship. They're actually their dead relatives are brought onto the ship, and they're saying they're absolutely alive. It's that kind of stuff which will maybe not make you money, but will tell you why you came here. And that's why I said the ultimate thing is, why am I here? What is life really all about? It's not about making money. How much money did Howard Hughes leave? He left it all. It's not about money. It's not about, having the two cars and the big house and stuff like that. That's not really what life comes down to. In the end, everybody leaves that behind. And you come into the whole idea that if it's multiple lives, then you came into this world to do something. And so that to me is the ultimate quest to me that I think people should be working at. And that's the kind of stuff that when you start looking at the experiencers, 37% of them say they've had a near-death experience. A lot of them, I don't know, it's probably even as high as 37, have had 2 near-death experiences. 40% say they've at one point during their experience, they knew the answer to everything in the universe. At one point during their experience, they knew the answer, 21%, to everything about themselves. That's powerful stuff. If you at one point during your experience, you knew the answer to everything in the universe, then the beings have access to that. And it's a matter of accessing that we could access it as well. If we can tap into that, all the answers are out there. Or 42% of all experiencers have mathematical, scientific, or technical material that is in their head that they did not learn in school. We are being helped. We are being given ideas. That's the important part, to figure out what are these messages. That's why I say the ultimate thing is to talk to experiencers. There's 4,000 of them that have filled out this 600 questions survey that are willing to tell you what the government won't tell you. To the stars won't tell you what they're doing. But these experiencers will tell you very clearly, they told me this, they told me that. They'll go all through this stuff. And you start looking at that stuff, you start getting the answer to how does the universe actually work. And that's the more important part, is trying to figure out what's this world all about. Not about how many toys I can get, rape, pillage, kill, and steal. Whoever's got the most toys when they die wins. It's about trying to figure out what's really going on. And that's the ultimate quest to me.
If that's all it's about, and not wanting to give out any information. How does the public actually benefit? I look at, this star team that MUFON has. They don't have to make their reports public. When Tom DeLonge was talking about transparency in ufology, we haven't really seen that unless it's under a controlled environment by the To the Stars campaign. Where the hell can people get proper information, Grant?
From the experiencers. You're not going to get it from To the Stars and these, because they've been doing this game. That's what I say. If you're going to do on the nuts and bolts thing, and you're going to do the measure and be the scientist type thing, and you're going to be doing this for, like people are still into the UFO sighting thing. And I said, we've done this for 70 years. And if you ask these people who are doing it, just say, what's going on? They'll say, it's a big mystery. We have no idea what's going on. Well, then why would you? What's the definition of insanity? To do the same thing over and over again and believe that tomorrow something's going to change. Nothing's going to change. The same with the metals. It doesn't get you anywhere. The videos don't get you. You can watch those Nimitz videos for the next 70 years. You're never going to learn anything beyond the fact that something's going on and it's probably not our stuff. That's where you got to get to the experiencers, where you get beyond that, and you got to listen to the experiencers. The problem with the UFO community is they just say, the experiencers is just anecdotal. They just think they're on a craft. They just think they've got these downloads. They just think this stuff. And I say, that's fine. It's all belief. That's one of the download things I got. It's like knowing and believing. People want to play this game. I know and you just believe. No, it's all belief. You believe you're a skeptic. You believe that sightings can get you. You believe you're a scientist. You believe this, that. You believe the Big Bang. It's all theory. It's all belief when you come down to it. And so I don't care what you do. You can take these experiences, 4,000 experiences, put them on lie detectors, do whatever you got to do, but do not ignore them. They have unbelievable amounts of material in their head that will help us solve a lot of the problems of the world. And they're being ignored. And we're still going to this thing because the modern world, the way it works in the modern world, the modern priests of the modern world, it used to be the Roman Catholic Church used to run the whole show. Now it's science. They are the high priests of the modern world. And nobody wants to offend the scientists. Nobody wants to say, oh, no, the scientists are wrong, because those are the guys that are going to suffer. It's not going to be the media. It's not going to be the government. It's going to be the scientists who are suddenly going to realize that 90% of everything they learn is absolute garbage. They spent $30,000 a year to go to MIT, and they were put a bunch of bullshit in their head. That's what people are going to realize. And scientists are not going to take well to that, the fact that it's not a material world. It's a world that the dual slit experiment showed it does not appear as a particle until there's an observer. Consciousness is primary. All the stuff that's in the Eastern religions 5,000 years ago, or you got the questers. And I'm going to talk a little bit about at the conference. I'm going to talk about this idea about access. So it's all the same thing. So whether you're channeling, or whether you're dowsing, or whether you're doing meditation or psychedelics or UFO abduction or whatever, it's all the same thing. It's accessing. It's moving out of the darkness into light, or ghosts, aliens, spirits. I think they all are in this higher environment where there's more light, where you can see more. And from time to time, somebody who's, say, a dowser or a channeler, or somebody who's been on board a ship, will be able to go into the light, and they will come back with information, whether it's a song, whether it's an invention, whether it's a message from an alien, and they'll bring it back into the darkness where we live, and they'll say, you know what? I think the world works like this. I think this is what's going on. And we'll go, you just believe that. That's anecdotal. You can't prove that. And that's the problem we have. And we've got to realize it's all the same thing. So that's all the paranormal phenomena. And I wrote a book called Inspired, where I come to that conclusion. It's all the same thing. It's just a higher vibration, closer to the light, whatever you want to. And it's a matter of access. It's the ability to access. And if you have people who are in the light, who are able to, whether it's talking to spirits or however they're getting the message, if you can get it and you can talk to these people, you can learn stuff that you will never learn by walking around in the darkness. We are blind. We're walking around. We don't have it. You have to be able to dissociate. You have to be able to move into the light. And these people, the experiencers, the channelers, the dowsers, have found the ability to dissociate, to move out of the darkness into the light and get answers. And those are the people we should be listening to. Forget about the scientists. They're not going anywhere. This is nothing to do with nuts and bolts. As long as you believe this is nuts and bolts, you ain't going anywhere. You're never going to solve the problem.
Mr. Grant Cameron, I want to say thank you for coming on Spaced Out Radio again tonight. It is always a pleasure. And more excitingly, I get to see you in about 2.5 weeks here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Tomorrow.
That's going to be fantastic.
You fly in.
Beautiful. We're going to have a good time.
Oh,
We're going to learn some stuff, and it'll be fantastic. And I appreciate your interest in me and my theories, which may be right, may be wrong. And let's do it again sometime.
Oh, we definitely will. We definitely will. And I hope you enjoyed watching some preseason hockey coming up here, because I know you're a giant Winnipeg Jets fan, and much appreciate you coming on Spaced Out Radio. Do me a favor before you go. Mention your website. Mention where people can find your books as well.
Okay, my website has changed. It's beyondpresidentialufo.com. It used to be presidentialufo.com, but it's now beyondpresidentialufo.com. I've got about, 6 or 7 books. They're on Amazon. Got one on music, one on, a couple on disclosure, one on inspiration, which I think is the best. It talks about this disassociation thing with channelers and out-of-body experience and stuff like that, where it's all going. And I always recommend my White House UFO YouTube channel, where most of the new stuff I put, like this interview with Stone, will appear on there. I do a lot of interviews, and because people are into the video stuff, the little short videos. So that's basically where you can find me. Or you can find me in 2 weeks at the conference. Be
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely.
And we'll sit down and talk to anybody. Dave goes till 4 o'clock in the morning. I can go till about 2 o'clock in the morning, but we'll sit and talk to anybody.
Yeah, you had to give out my nighttime secrets. Thank you, my friend. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Grant Cameron, everybody. And Grant, once again, will be speaking, our keynote speaker at the first annual Caribou Paracon. We got the man, the myth, the news legend, Everett Thiemer, coming up with the encounter next. It's time once again to talk about the weird, the strange, the WTF in the news of the day, as we bring you the encounter tonight with news director Everett Thiemer. The news is always changing, and that's why we bring you the encounter. Don't forget, we're just in the process of updating our website, and we're moving news over as we speak. But for now, you can find all of our Spaced Out Radio news at facebook.com/SOR The Encounter. Give it a like if you don't mind. Mr. Thiemer, the president of Team Stump. How you doing?
I'm doing great, but you are the president of Team Stump.
You always try and throw that at me. And we just know it isn't true. It isn't true. Whatever.
It is true.
Whatever, my friend. You know, Grant Cameron, I got to tell you, I don't think I've had a faster speaker on this show. And I mean that with all due respect, because the guy is a pro. And he tries so hard to get so much information into such a short amount of time. This is a type of episode where you really need to listen to it 2-3 times to make sure you catch everything.
Yeah, when Grant speaks, I feel like I should be scribbling notes as he goes along, because he covers so much. But I still know that I'm going to miss half of it and have to go back and listen some more.
Could you imagine being in court with Grant on the stand and you're the court reporter?
Oh, that would be miserable. I'm not a good typist now.
I know. But yes, Grant, I have a lot of respect for, and I've got to know Grant very, very well this year. And, you know, whether it's talking hockey or whether it's, you know, talking UFOs, I mean, the guy is just so passionate with what he does. And I think that's why I trust his word a lot on where I get my own personal information from a lot of these, you know, times when I'm talking about my own information, what I've learned. And it's amazing how open he is, because it doesn't matter if you have one sentence that could help his research or you have 3 hours of a recorded interview. He's going to give you the time of day. He's going to give you the time of day because it's important to him. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You said he's passionate. And one of the things I like about him is that he's passionate about the information, not about what it can do for anybody or himself. He just wants the information.
Yeah. Why is that so hard for so many people?
I think if we could answer that, we'd have the keys to the kingdom.
No kidding. No kidding. I think you hit the nail on the head right there, my friend, as we thank Grant Kemen for coming on the first 2.5 hours of the show. What do we got in the news tonight, my friend?
Well, the hotels in the Costa Blanca resort region of Spain are banding together. They want to eliminate minibars in their rooms. And the reason is that this trade organization for the hotels there, Hosbeck, has found that the minibar bottles are being refilled with things like urine so that the guests don't have to pay for the minibar services. So instead, they want to remove the minibars and basically have vending machines in the lobbies and reception areas.
That would make a lot more sense if it has to do with health. Why would somebody do that? Honestly.
Have you ever paid for a bottle? Have you ever paid for a bottle in a minibar?
No, to be honest with you. You know, because the only time I've been able to afford a hotel that has a minibar like that is in Las Vegas. And when you open up the fridge and you move one of those bottles, they actually charge you.
Well, you know, the weird thing, and I'm learning more and more about Europe that makes me think I need to live there. Apparently, minibars were a requirement in hotels in Spain if they had 3 or more stars. And just in 2015, the rules were changed so that they did not have to have or were not required to have minibars in the rooms. I mean, that is a fabulous culture when you're requiring alcohol in a hotel room, regardless of how much it costs.
No kidding. No kidding. I just can't imagine paying $10 for like a shot and a half of booze. Not that I wouldn't do it in a club or anything, but you know how it goes.
Their research also indicates that apparently it is primarily the British guests that are refilling the minibar bottles with pee.
Yeah, but who does that? That's not even funny. That's not even funny. Who does that?
I don't know, and I don't understand the concept of a minibar, really, because a majority of these places, you can find a liquor store within the area and go buy. I mean, those little bottles at a liquor store typically only cost $1 or so. Or you can get yourself a full-size bottle and just bring it into the room. Why pay $6, $7, $8 for some of the stuff? And then if you go after the peanuts or the pistachios, there's another outrageous charge.
I know.
It's definitely crazy.
That's why when I travel, I try and find the closest pizza by the slice. And first thing I do is look at what time they're open till. Because at 2 a.m., it doesn't matter what the pizza is or how good or bad it is. It goes down perfectly.
Yeah, it does. And now I want pizza.
Story number 2, my friend.
Nirmal Malai is the CEO of a drug company, Nostrum Laboratories. And he raised the price of a generic drug that he holds the patent to. It's called nitrofurantoin, and it's a drug for urinary tract infections. He raised the price from just under $500 a bottle to just under $2,400 a bottle.
Nice guy.
And yeah, and in an interview with the Financial Times, he said that it was a moral requirement to sell the product for the highest price, and he explained that he was in the business to make money. He also defended Martin Shkreli, Pharma Bro,
who's in jail right now.
Yeah, on unrelated charges for what he did with raising the price of another decades-old, basically generic drug. But this Nostrum Laboratories, they pointed out that one of their rivals, a company called Casper Pharma, raised the price of its brand name version of this drug. And they raised it from, I believe it was just about like $500 to about $2,800. And this Nostrum Pharmaceuticals said that their drug is still a savings regardless of whether it's a big one or not.
Mm-hmm. It always amazed me that Shkreli, and it seems like this new guy too, they don't get in trouble for killing people. But, I mean, you mess with the shareholders, holy cow, you're off to jail. There's something really backwards about that. I mean, am I the only one seeing that?
No, and I'm sure I'll take some heat for this, but I have a big issue with the profits that are gained on some of these drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are huge research costs, but in this case, these drugs are almost 50 years old. The research that led to the development of them is long gone and paid for.
Yeah.
And in
it's
fact,
terrible.
And in fact, the drug that Shkreli had, there was a compounding pharmacy that was able to make that drug for $1 a dose.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they went into competition in order to blow Shkreli out, I believe.
Yeah.
Because of the ethics of it all. And you know what? I got to tell you. That's why, and I'm not trying to rub this in or anything, because we got a lot of problems with our own healthcare system up here. But this is why I love having a healthcare system where I can go get anything that I need.
And you guys have some different rules on things that can be over the counter.
Yeah.
Because I know that, Tracy uses that Voltaren gel.
Yeah. Well, $10, $11 a tube. And when Amy Martin was up here, she almost had a panic attack over that because the Voltaren, or I think it was Voltaren, was like $100 a tube down there.
Yeah. Tracy has to get a special prescription for it, and I think we pay about $60 a tube for it.
That's terrible.
And you guys can get it over the counter for what, about $10?
Well, Advil was the same way for a long time. Because in a lot of states, like 15, 20 years ago, wasn't it that Advil was a prescribed pharmaceutical drug?
Isn't Advil just ibuprofen?
Yeah.
I had no idea that Advil was ever a prescription drug.
I thought it was. Maybe I'm wrong.
Now, I know you guys have the T3, I think it is, the Tylenol with codeine.
Yeah, you can get those.
Good luck trying to get those down here.
Yeah. It's just terrible, And I know we don't have much time, and this could be weeks and weeks and months of debate. But I can tell you this: it sure makes me comfortable knowing that at any time, if one of my family members or even myself gets sick, you just go to the hospital. You just go.
Yeah, that's something that some people down here don't have that.
And there's
that
no
luxury.
Bill. Yeah, there's no bill at the end.
But that's a huge debate for another day.
Huge debate. But nonetheless, we got time for one more, and then I want to ask you a question.
All right. What are your thoughts on the trend of and the apparent upcoming rise of lab-grown meat? Did you just throw up in your mouth a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I do when I even say it.
Yeah, I don't even like that.
Well, there's a trade group that's formed with some based around some of the startups for this idea of lab-grown meat. And they were trying to figure out what to call it. And for a while, they were referring to it as clean meat based on the idea that it is grown in a laboratory and that, means it's clean. But they felt that was a little derogatory to other forms of meat. So they had a panel discussion and they were trying to figure out what to call their product. And they've decided apparently to call it cell-based meat product. Can't you just wait to have a cell-based meat burger?
Oh, I'm starting to get those grotesque burps right now. Oh, man. That's worse than spam.
You know, I know that there are a lot of environmental and ethical reasons to go down this road and develop something like this, but I'm just not at the point where I can stomach it. I mean, I've got maple smoked bacon. I've got applewood smoked bacon. I have lots of bacon, and I just don't think you can reproduce that in a lab.
Mm-hmm. No. Meat should grow from an animal, not in a lab.
And in fact, the Cattlemen's Association has used those guidelines, and several states have passed laws that are requiring to use the term meat. The product has to be born, raised, and slaughtered in traditional manners.
I agree.
Yeah, the idea of just a cell-based burger does not appeal to me at all.
No, I don't see that being very tasty. I don't see that being very healthy, because what we need more of in life is more chemicals in our diet. You know what I'm saying? We need more chemicals. We need more fake food. We need more.
Okay, in its defense, it is not fake. It is regenerated
it's
from
fake.
Cells of animals.
It's fake.
Which is even less appealing than anything else.
Yeah, not a fan of that. Not a fan of that. Okay, so here's my question for you, Everett. And I'm gonna make this a little bit serious here for a second, because the last couple of years I had done a 9/11 conspiracy type special, and I kind of looked at things this year, and I didn't want to go down that road. Didn't want to do it. And, you know, even though I have personal questions about everything, today I figured it would be just a day of reflection. What was your day like 17 years ago?
You know, I can remember exactly what it was like, because I had woken up with the news on, and that's how I found out about it, was right as I was climbing out of bed. And everybody kind of wandered around with a mixture of like the surreal kind of feeling, but yet always going back to the news or the radio or trying to get more information. And I remember getting some phone calls, finding out that people I knew were okay. And the one thing that I really remember is that we were standing outside that night, and the fact that all the planes had been grounded.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much air traffic there is, even if you're not paying attention to it, and it's just in the background. Mm-hmm. When it was gone, standing outside at 10, 11 o'clock at night, talking to people, it was weird and very noticeable.
Isn't that true? You know, I remember waking up, my ex-wife woke me up and said, Dave, she screamed at me because I'd got home from work at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And she screamed at me. She goes, Dave, wake up. The Third World War has started. And all of a sudden, you know, you hear something like that, you panic. So I ran downstairs to the television, saw what was happening just as the buildings were collapsing. And I immediately called our newsroom, and my sports director says you might as well take the day off. So I called the Canadian Football League team, the BC Lions. They were having practice. I knew they had a couple of people one was from DC on their roster, and one was from New York. And I quickly drove to practice and talked to them, where we watched the flight line for the Vancouver International Airport. All of a sudden, there was no planes in the sky. And it was really weird, because all of a sudden practice stopped, and every player looked up in the sky and realized there was no more planes. And then later on, at about 7:30 that night, we had found out that two members of the Los Angeles Kings scouting staff, Mark Bavis and NHL Hall of Famer, why is his name? Ace Bailey, Garnet Ace Bailey, were on the first flight that hit the tower. And so I called up the Vancouver Canucks director of scouting, Ron DeLorme, and I said, Ron, I'm sorry to interview you on a day like this. Do you mind? He's like, Dave, I got a few minutes for you. How you doing? I said, it's a tough day. He goes, yeah, no kidding. So I started asking him about Mark Bavis and Garnet Ace Bailey. He gives me this beautiful 8-minute interview that I'm going to cut into sections. And I said, thank you so much, Ron. I should probably let you go. And he goes, Dave, I got to tell you, I didn't know they were on the flight.
Wow.
And that moment has always stuck with me because I thought everybody knew in the NHL world would have known that these two members of the Los Angeles Kings were there on that first plane. And to be able to tell Ron DeLorme, who a gentleman who I remember as a kid watching him play, and he was just a monster, tough hockey player. And hearing his voice kind of crack up saying after the interview, after 8 minutes of not even letting on that he didn't know, for him to say, Dave, I didn't know that they were gone, that they were on that flight. It was some of the most profound words I have ever heard. How do you get over that?
I don't know. I was lucky enough. I knew some people in New York and I knew some people in the area, but I didn't know anybody that was killed or injured in it. And, I did get some phone calls and talk to some people. And, what I remember is for days kind of walking around a bit stunned, but always having the news on in the background. It was just like a constant feed of information. And it's the weird things that I remember.
I remember one of our anchors that night, his name was Jim. And if you saw Jim, you would swear he was a guy who hadn't showered in about 17 days. Okay, and I'm not even making fun of it. Like, he had really bad body odor and everything, but he was the epitome of a professional behind that microphone. He went 9 hours straight on the air without a teleprompted report.
That's amazing, and there were a lot of people, journalists and reporters that were doing things like that. And even though sometimes the information was inaccurate, there were always people trying to get the information out.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. On that note, I want to say God bless to everybody who passed that day and to everybody who has been affected by that day one way or another. It was our generation's Pearl Harbor, and we should never forget. That's what happens when hate takes over the world, and we don't spread the love and light, man. Seriously.
Still doesn't feel like it was that long ago.
I know. But let's get to the thought of the day. End up on a happy note here. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where you will answer a question that I post on my Facebook or Twitter, and then we read your answers on the air, because we love the audience participation part of this show, and we know you do too. So we're going to get right into it. Today's Thought of the Dave is as followed. Gotta love this song. Love this song. All right. Where is it here? With what you've seen in the last 11 months, are we any closer to disclosure? Everett, what's your thoughts? Quick one.
I don't know. There's something that tells me we're not looking in the right places.
I would agree with you. Tim says, nope, further away, the TTSA has done nothing of great accomplishment, video-wise. Chuck, Not an inch closer. Same noise we have heard for years now, just repackaged. No government will disclose if any other choice is possible. No, they are going to have to be caught red-handed, and then the only going to disclose the least they can get away with. Little Ronnie Moniak. Not even close. The cycle is never-ending shuffle of words and alleged reports. As long as no one can actually be consistent in material that is presented and proof is questionable, the government will never be held accountable with the world government so steadfast in their own sovereignty. I find it amazing that if they knew or had contact, it would remain a secret for that long. The day contact is official will be the day the immigrate or invade Earth. Until the deep state conspiracy will be in the norm. Gail says, maybe a tiny bit closer, but nothing that will change the way any of the Earth's citizens live out their daily lives. Now it's just not so much joke fodder anymore. It's as it is a possibility. Sleepy Dave, I said it before and I will say it again. The Supreme Court ruled in 82 UFOs are a matter of national security. A UFO group tried to get the government to admit the existence of such things, but they were struck down in court. And unless you get a judge to overturn that 82 Supreme Court ruling, you will never have this closure. Why do not any of the other researchers mention this? Why is it avoided? Wish I would have saw that one before. Bob
That's a
says,
good point.
Yeah. No. This comes from Hi, Bob. Hi, Bob. No, the world runs on fossil fuel energy. Disclosure would kill the cash cow that the elite bases the money system on. The change to a free energy system would take years and would not be free. They would have to come up with some kind of infrastructure to charge us for machines or equipment that would need to replace the revenue from oil. Gregory, after reading your question, I went out on the net and listened to a few videos of people I follow from time to time. The short answer to your question is, whether it's been 17 months or 17 years, the question is moot. Because if you don't have the answers and the people who do have the answers won't share the info, then there is no way I can intelligently answer this question to begin with. Oh, that was smooth. That was very, very smooth. Let's get to Twitter. Sadly, from CE5 Canada, you are correct. We, the people that live outside the box, would like to hope we see disclosure. However, I think we are decades off of full disclosure. The only disclosure we may see is a false flag, further confusing the public and instilling more fear. I hope I'm wrong. All right. I think that's not too bad. I mean, people aren't as excited as I thought they would be of.
Yeah, I'm not surprised though. I think that disclosure is just becoming a non-point anymore. We keep talking about it, but it never changes.
It's a frustrating word. We're going to get a couple more in here before we go. Cat. Nope, not a little. Anyone who wasn't interested is already disinterested. We live in a public that demands a fluid flow of information and not the drippings that was divulged in the ancient days of 2017. John Edmonds, former guest on this show, states, no, lots of noise, no validation. And we'll quickly give Renee the last word of the night. Nope. No closer to disclosure, not even close. Too many governments and officials feel they have too much to lose by doing so. Too much technical information, scientific knowledge, and so on to let another country get their hands on it, and or it is economical and financial based. Sharing is losing to most governments, has nothing to do with fear of the common folk knowing the truth. We're going to leave it right there. Smart comment, Renee. Thank you so much. Mr. Everett, let us know where we can find the encounter.
For right now, you can find the encounter at facebook.com/SOR the encounter online, but we are moving things over to the news section on spacedoutradio.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. And a big thank you to Grant Cameron for coming on in to Spaced Out Radio tonight, talking about an update on disclosure, what has been happening recently. Tomorrow night on the program, It's Reality Paranormal with Chris Cogswell, the scientist, and Chris George Zuger, the bad man of ufology. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern at spacedoutradio.com. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Don't forget, you're 2 weeks away, just over 2 weeks away, from the first annual Caribou Paracon presented by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers, September 28th through 30th. Grant Cameron will be speaking up here, as well as myself and a number of others. Go to questers.ca. That's questers.ca. Click on the fall conference. Get your tickets right now. Special thank you to everybody listening in tonight, whether you're at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Everybody on Spreaker, you were fantastic tonight. Everybody on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, Revolution Radio's chat room, and the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thanks for sharing the show and doing your part, because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one, everyone. Good night.